by really just. Picture so that you actually find.
That's what I gotta figure out how to get that done here.
Oh, you're sitting here watching a spinning wheel.
Oh, you are? So he's not in. Steve's not in.
Yeah, I think I am.
Also.
But let's see if I am. on.
Well, maybe we can. Side launch.
No, I am. It's just the thing I'm trying to open is taking forever.
Well, it's not, if it's, I'm in. Are you the one who's letting me in, or is Dennis?
This meeting is being recorded.
I know, but I wasn't. I'm mute, I guess. No, I'm muted for the meeting. I turn my own volume off. What are you looking for? Oh, what's that? Oh. I probably have another push the button.
I could see what from the library.
I
Probably have to
oh.
put that. Okay.
Yeah. Here, wait. Okay. Yeah, she's going to get it. As I guess. Well, we're too late. He went, gotten one from the library. And try and proceed. Okay.
All right. Ready?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the second regular meeting of the Danby TownBoard for the month of March. Before we get going, there might be additions and deletions to the agenda. There's one proposed addition and two proposed deletions.
There's what?
One addition, two deletions. The addition is the talking about the potential changing from elected to appointed town clerk. And the two deletions are the amendment to correspondence policy and the resolution in support for EMS legislation. I didn't get together in time.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, for 9.11 is an out and
yes,
what else?
and I did not respond in a timely way to your correspondence with me on the correspondence policy. So
Oh,
kind of,
okay.
but
Correspondence policy, okay. Oh,
where's that one? 9.2. Any other additions or deletions? So add the, we want to add the addition. And
that's what we've been doing lately.
it is.
I mean, from the night.
That's so, okay, now,
Point of order. Could the people speak up a little bit? You're
yeah,
can't be heard from the gavel.
yep,
Thank you.
Yeah,
I can hear over here.
yeah. You can't be here without your microphone.
I'm not worried about hearing myself, I can't hear anything.
I'm worried about them hearing you.
But I'm not talking, I mean, right now,
Sound like you're talking, but,
I can't hear you.
All we're doing is mumbling about who can hear and who can't.
I know.
right.
And you're the hardest one for us to hear, I feel that
Yes,
right, right
yes.
in front of you.
And yours doesn't work without being turned on either.
I
There you
personally
go.
felt
All right.
Exactly.
All right. Privilege of the floor. Is there anyone who'd like to address? Yes, Marty, you have to come up and use this mic so that others can hear you.
I'm Marnie Kirchkastner. I live at 74 West Jersey Hill Road, which you,
Yeah, it is. It's on, but you're within range. It's good.
am I too far away?
Yeah, you were.
Part of it is I don't want to spit on it, you know what I
Don't
mean?
spit.
Without my,
No spitting.
look, you know, life has become so complicated. What I am here about tonight,
Mhm.
and I sent something that I saw in one of the weekly papers to Leslie in the middle of last night, because I don't know if perhaps this is on your goal setting and capital projects, but the town of Caroline is partnering with the town of Dryden to see what they're gonna do about providing internet, broadband to the people. This has been my issue. I have come here repeatedly, over and over. I am 4.2 miles from Walmart. I have, unless I have a landline, I don't have a cell signal. I spent $1,200 on an antenna so that I could get a cell signal that sometimes works, but doesn't always work. And it still is completely unreliable. Now, I want to be a contributing citizen. I want to be able to go to the website. I want to be able to not depend on my friends and neighbors when I have meetings to attend on Zoom. But that's not the story of my life. That is not the story of the lives of my neighbors. And, you know, and on one hand, it seems like, you know, but it's not. And, you know, as my neighbors, you know, have tried to, you know, put their kids through college, the most recent, I mean, it's just a struggle. The mailman doesn't always pick up the mail. The mailman doesn't often come down the road. The school bus doesn't seem to know where I live. I mean, it just feels like all of the things that are very, very simple for so many people, and you get, you know, you watch on your television set and you see all these things that are so, you think, oh, yes, well, that's not an available option to those of us without reliable internet. And I hope, you know, I live in the house that my parents bought when I was born, okay? So I have long-standing roots within this community, and I don't care about noise. I don't care about noise ordinances. I don't care about, there was something short-term rental. I mean, I appreciate that you are in good faith pursuing many of these things, but I am 72 years old, and I feel like someone should listen to the needs of a vast majority, or well, I don't know if it's a majority, but certainly a segment of this community, and I include some of you, that don't have reliable internet. And it's a crime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
What were the two towns that you said are collaborating, Lansing and Dryden?
No,
Caroline.
Caroline is right.
The one that was just
Yeah.
recently, my parents on their, ARPA funds, is that what they're called?
Yes, right, yeah. They got a grant, from the county for, I forget, 70,000, something like that, just to start, and committed all of their ARPA money to, which is over $300,000, to, hiring, the Hunt engineers out of Elmira to do a feasibility study of, municipal broadband, essentially, in the town of Caroline. Which is what the town of Dryden is already doing. They're installing a town-wide fiber network. And the hope is that that Caroline can piggyback off of what they're doing. You have to get parts of Dryden, they're going to have to go through parts of Caroline, so it makes a lot of sense to connect up.
And I know Spencer just did a huge project also.
Yeah. Anyone else with privilege of the floor? I'm not seeing it.
Gary.
Gary. Oh, yeah. Before we get too far into it, I would say that if your comments relate to the noise issue, Warren's going to be making a statement that will sort of set the context for our discussion. And I will entertain comments from the public at that point. So you need not anticipate, and not without knowing what's going to come after, if that's what you have in mind. Gary.
Yes, I'd like to bring out something I brought up at the last meeting about the either the town supervisor or one of the board members being the host of these meetings and unmuting everybody until I mean, like I say, I said before, we're all adults, and right now the way it's set up, the host can unmute theirself anytime and chime in whenever they want, but the rest of us don't have that privilege. So I'd like the board to consider that. And if somebody gets out of hand, you can always, the person that's the host, either Joel or one of the board members, can mute that person at that time. And one other thing, I noticed the last meeting, there was an issue about, that was brought up, I think by Janice, about, I don't know if it was a threat or, there was a concern about somebody loitering around the town hall. I went back and I viewed the tape or the recording, and what it appeared to be was the gentleman was at the bus stop across the street. The wind was blowing. He ran over to the town hall to get in the alcove there to get out of the wind. He never entered the building. He tried to get in once, but the door was already locked. He never entered the building. And then when either his ride came or the bus came, you could see him running across the parking lot, across the street to get into wherever he was going to go. So actually there was no threat or anything there. I would suggest if somebody feels there is a threat, instead of filing a report with the town, call the sheriff's department. I mean, filing a form with the town isn't going to do a heck of a lot. At least the sheriff's department could send somebody out. So that's my suggestion. But there was nothing that was going to bother anybody in that case. That's it.
Thanks, Gary. Ted.
There we go. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having a really clear picture on the screen right now.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
We need to, what?
No,
it's
it's
not
not
that.
bad.
I
think it's here.
No, I think it is.
No, it can't be.
No, because the other person didn't have that problem.
Maybe it's
Ted
Ted's house.
No, I think it's his problem, yeah.
Is it,
I
is
only
it
have-
you?
It was your laptop. I'm here.
I only have one microphone going, so sorry, it's not me.
Seems to be okay now.
Yep, I'll start again. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having a really clear picture on the screen. It's one of the few times I've been able to see everybody in the audience. Second, I'll reiterate what Gary said, as I did last time. We are all adults here. I think you should treat us as such and not as potential felons, if you will. It really isn't necessary. Third thing, I notice you have on the agenda some appointments, and I'd like to point out that for the second time in recent meetings, you are appointing someone without following you're appointing people without following the appointment procedure. There was no public announcement of this position and no solicitation for the public. You also have another item. You also have on the agenda the possible use of town hall by an outside group. And I think that I'd like you to continue a previous policy, which is that commercial applications are not allowed in town hall. If a community group wants to bring vetted vendors to present them as alternatives to another program which has happened in the past. I think the heating systems, people did that. That's okay, but not for plain old sales. And I'm reserving my comments about the noise until after we've heard Warren. So my final thing is the consideration of appointments, appointing a town clerk versus electing one. I'm sorry to say this, guys, but the town board has been completely derelict in handling this, has handled this whole situation very poorly. And it's a very passive aggressive thing to decide that if we can't deal with it, we're simply going to eliminate the elected position and just appoint someone we like. There is a reason why the town clerk is not generally appointed sometimes. And it is because the town clerk is, in a sense, an independent piece of the government whose role is to ride herd on making sure that the record of what's going on in the town board meetings is correct. That's not going to happen if the town clerk is beholden to the town board for their job. So I think that's a very poor way to deal with it. If you want to deal with it, I would suggest basically making public the problems you have with the clerk and let her deal with a response if necessary. Make it public, and therefore the public will know about it, and the electorate will, in theory, if you're right, not elect her again. But avoiding the issue for months and months, and then trying to simply abolish the position in order to deal with a specific problem, I don't agree with that. And I'll talk to you again when we come to the noise ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else privileged to the floor? I don't see anybody. Janice, there's no correspondence, is that correct?
There actually is a correspondence. Yes, I added it to the agenda. Hang on. The Southern Tier Central Regional Planning and Development Board. A person from that contingency called and said that some board members had attended last year, but no one had registered. So she wanted to point out that the registration deadline is tomorrow and that there are 4 hours of training credits available. So I told her I would mention that tonight at the board meeting.
Great, thanks. You send that on to the planning board members?
I can. It's for all elected and appointed people.
Especially relevant for the planning board.
Dave and I went last year.
Did you? Yeah.
That was good.
Announcements? Anybody have one? Oh, okay. Dan is not here. Oh, yes, he is here. Dan, would you like to say a few words?
There he is.
Hello, thank you. Yes, I just have a little bit to talk about. So one of the things is that there's this countywide code enforcement study going on right now.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it personally. I have not been following it closely, but I understand that at least one person from Danby has been involved with it. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention to make sure you all knew about it. And if you have any concerns about what's going on with that, to let me know so that I can tune into what's going on with that study.
Yeah, actually, we've been involved in several levels because the officials have been involved, the planner's been involved, and the code enforcement officer has also been involved. And each one of those has been separately surveyed as part of the process, and have been meetings held by the county for with each one of those groups, of which I was party, to talk about what the collective concerns were, and that will be followed up. In fact, it's follow up tomorrow at the KeyCog meeting, where it will be a topic of discussion, and I'm sure there'll be more following that as well. But anyway, so yeah, I at least am fully aware. It may be the rest of the board is not so much. So yeah. So thanks for bringing it up.
Sure. And could I ask briefly if you know what your impression is so far? Is it feel like it's going in a good direction, or?
Well, I mean, they're being very thorough in asking all the questions that could be asked, and the hard part will be trying to discern what there will be support for doing. And that's where we are in the process at this point, is what, what are they going to, what is the consultant going to take away and bring back by way of suggestions, recommendations, or options to look at. So it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out, because at this stage, it's not clear what there's agreement on.
Thank you.
You want to explain a little bit more what it's about? Or?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this was raised last year, I think. What potential avenue for collaboration would be to have some part of code enforcement done by the county. There's already some connected stuff. For instance, there's agreement that it'd be good to have the county take over street numbering, part of the, you do assigning numbers when new construction happens. It's often done at the county level, some places. But that was an obvious potential for cooperation. There's also the possibility, because the code's gotten so complicated and so extensive, it's very difficult for any one person to have familiarity with all aspects of it. So the question that's being asked now is, could we have some, could we have a person focused on some aspect of it who does it all countywide? So that's one possibility.
Okay. All right. I just didn't know what it was about. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other, I think I was trying to remember what the other component was, but
Okay.
okay, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, and like I said, as this progresses, if you want me to tune in more, please let me know.
Sure, yeah.
The other thing I was just going to bring up, when I was on the Danby TownBoard, I don't remember hearing about the Hillview Road landfill very much. I don't think I even knew about it until later on. And so I thought I'd just mention it briefly to those that don't know. In West Danby, there is a closed landfill, the Hillview Road landfill. And there is a citizens advisory committee that keeps track of the testing that's done on this landfill. Joel has been a member of this committee for like 20 something years, maybe, Joel?
Yes, yeah, as long as the committee has existed.
I'm a relative newcomer, but I just wanted to mention this latest development is that we decided to go ahead and test for PFAS, P-F-A-S. I'm not going to say what it all stands for. It's some long chemical name. It's commonly known as the forever chemical, and it's an emerging concern in a lot of places, drinking water and other places that it might pollute. And so for the first time, we're planning on testing the leachate from the Hillview Road landfill to see if it contains this chemical. That's my report.
Keith isn't here though. And we have Steve's report in writing.
Yeah.
Right. Which brings us to Triple Cities Network. And they are represented here by two people, right?
Okay.
Drew is here and Renee, right? So since you guys are on Zoom, we could just unmute you. Take it away.
Hi, everyone.
There you go. Yeah.
Drew, I was able to unmute myself. You might be able to as well.
Yeah, we're good. You're good. You're on. Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah.
Nice to see everybody again tonight. It's been a while since I've been in a board meeting, so it's kind of fun for me, actually. Maybe not fun, but exciting. I've been on the boards before for nonprofits and stuff. So I am Drew. I'm the president and founder of Triple Cities Network Solutions. Renee is our director of sales on our team. We are here tonight to talk to you guys about IT resources that we could provide to the town of Danby. I think this started in November 28th of 2021. We were reached out to by Janice We were referred from All Mode, who had done a phone system for you guys about 2 years ago, to do some assistance with IT support. So that's led us to today. I've been talking with Catherine on many occasions, and I've actually been in the office there with you guys a few times, meeting in person, I think once, and then a few other phone calls with people in the office. So yeah, I would just like to discuss a little bit about what we can do to help the town, cybersecurity concerns we have, cyber insurance concerns that we have for you guys, things that have been brought to my attention and my team's attention, we can take care of for you. So anybody have any questions for Renee or me before I get started? Everybody can hear me okay?
Yeah, right.
Awesome.
Questions always follow upon rather than precede
Gotcha.
your
No,
comment.
I just making sure everybody can hear me okay and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're recommending that you guys work with us for our managed services plan that's called Service Care, that would provide comprehensive support for the town board, in any systems and software and cybersecurity needs that you guys have. We have some concerns recently. Another village of Odessa, was hit with an ACH fraud campaign. A mailbox was compromised there by a threat actor based out of Miami, Florida. The issue was preventable in this situation with some education and training and proper configuration of email servers. They lost a total of $86,000 in January and another $100,000 2 weeks ago before we started working with the village. We were made aware of the issue from one of our customers that is an engineering firm, a large engineering firm based out of Pennsylvania, that was doing work for them and was alerted by them of the fraudulent activities. So, for me, my biggest concern is this happening to other people. As everybody knows, that ransomware and cyber extortion is an issue. Towns, counties, and villages are heavily targeted because your organizations just can't go out of business, right? You're basically free money to the bad guy in this situation. And there's nothing stopping a determined threat actor with an improper IT setup from executing these very basic attacks. To them, ransomware, ACH fraud, direct deposit fraud is just, you're a customer in those situations. The attacks that are often used in these situations and that affected Odessa comes from a phishing email. You get a phishing email, you click on the phishing email, it says, hey, I've shared a document with you, here's your invoice. Could be so many different things, a free pizza for all things, right? Just anything that gets anybody to click. From there, it takes you to a website. If you have any cookies or an authentication token stored in a browser with that service, this website is able to extract that, and then the threat actor is immediately able to log into a mailbox or the services where the tokens were stored. Without such basics like multi-factor authentication and alerting and monitoring of cloud services, email platforms, web applications, websites, QuickBooks Online, any of those sorts of things, you're going to have a compromise in that situation. So you send an email, the victim opens it, they've been logging into their email via web browser on a personal computer at home, on an office computer at the office, on a town computer, doesn't matter where. You click that email, that opens in a web browser, I am in there instantaneously. And then from there, the threat actor would scrape the contents of the mailbox. So they're going to look at every email that the victim has ever sent or received, and then they're going to pretend to be one of those contacts that you have. So for example, if you're working with an engineering company, as somebody mentioned Hunt Engineers earlier, and I get into a mailbox and I'm the bad guy, I'm going to go out and buy a domain name that looks just like Hunt Engineers. And then I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to look at a recent thread between, I don't know, let's pick on Catherine, between Catherine and Hunt Engineers or the bookkeeper. asking for ACH money for a project that you're actively working on with these people and say, hey, I need you to wire the money here. Our payment terms have changed. I may even have someone get on the phone and call you and claim to be a staff member, a male or female from Hunt Engineers or whoever the impersonation victim is. In this case, Hunt isn't compromised, but it's the actual victim's mailbox that's being infiltrated where that data is scraped out. And then I send and receive a few emails, make a few phone calls, get you to wire the money or change someone's direct deposit on their payroll. And these types of attacks typically have repeat issues. In the case of Odessa, it happened twice and they didn't know about it for 90 days almost. Other situations, I've seen other entities up and around your region do it twice for $60,000 within 2 months of each other. The first time it's like, oh, well, I just thought that this was the project that I was doing here. And then the next thing you know, they do it again. And then it's like, oh, well, this is not good. I'm sure you guys have heard of people texting or sending emails and saying, hey, I'm so-and-so. I need you to go get me some iTunes gift cards. I need you to buy me an Amazon gift card, all very similar scams. And so without proper preventative measures and preparation, it's no longer an if it happens to an organization, it's really a when. And the proof is in the pudding with cyber insurance, applying for cyber insurance applications. You cannot get an underwriter to issue cyber insurance for any organizations without the proper security controls in place to defend against these fraudulent activities, because they do not want to pay out a claim if you're negligent essentially with IT systems in those cases. So my company has been around for 6 years and we specialize in helping small and medium businesses with their IT needs and preventing these types of threats, and educating those end users in those situations. So some additional services that come along when we engage with customers. We help you make IT decisions at large, not just, hey, we're going to protect you from cybersecurity issues and set up your computers and monitor your backups and things like that, but help advise on issues like getting a new phone system, engaging a vendor for a new website, creating new web content, business process workflows from your accounting software to your, town management software, helping you with issues with your microphone in your conference room, in your webcams and things like that to make these virtual meetings more successful for you and the town people, as well as, planning long-term IT budgets. So any of our customers know what they need to be doing 36 months from now, 24 months from now, 5 years from now, what a realistic budget looks like for those types of organizations, whether they're a nonprofit, a CPA, a town, $100 million a year engineering firm. It's all the same type of service that we provide for those customers. I don't want to take up too much time and talk about myself a lot. Does anybody have any questions? I'm happy to answer them or talk about myself as well if you guys would like to know more about me personally. Everybody knows I make maple syrup though, so we're good there.
Which you're probably doing a lot of right now, right?
I bottled off 4.5 gallons last night, Joel, and that's it. I'm done. I already have like 3 gallons that I made, so that's more than enough. I can't give away that much, so we'll see what happens.
Not hard to give away if you want to.
Yeah, well, you got to get your jars back. That's the challenge. You give away
Yeah.
salsa and canned good, you never get your jars back, and well, that adds up quickly. Yeah. So
I have a question, Drew.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious about all the range of kinds of things that make us vulnerable, and it's not just email, I'm presuming. So what other things it can't just all be because of email, right? Or is it?
Yeah, so I can answer that. That's a good question, Catherine. And the hat you should put on when I answer this is that you are a cyber criminal. You have a business that is built and makes money off of extorting people for their data and their information and just straight up stealing from them. So if that's your business, the easiest way to make money is via email fraud, right? It is via exploiting the easiest payday possible. Most ransomware attacks come from end users doing things that they shouldn't on their systems, and typically most of that centers around receiving attachments, email, bad websites, bad computer use hygiene, etc. There are other threats that you can face. Simply, I could walk into the parking lot and drop a flash drive in your parking lot, and I bet that anybody that picks it up will plug it into their computer and open it up when they see an Excel document called, payroll changes 2023, or, termination notices for staff 2023, an Excel file, a Word doc, whatever, something interesting. So those types of attacks are probably not going to happen to the town of Danby, where somebody is going to drop a flash drive in your parking lot and specifically seek one of you out, because it is expensive for a cyber criminal to do so. But it is not expensive for a cyber criminal to break into a website, to break into the town's website, to break into another village's website that you might visit, load malware on that web page, and then you go visit it unexpectedly, and suddenly now you're the victim. So in a lot of these situations, the person who thinks that they're the victim is actually only a step on the branch of the tree of getting to a bigger payday, right? If they're going to be able to ransom someone for $100,000, chances are you have organizations that you work with that are far more valuable targets than you guys are, and they will come in and they will do damage to an organization to get to the bigger fruit. But the threats are across the board. The mitigation of those threats is pretty relatively easy to get the low-hanging fruit taken care of. And a lot of that starts with training, proper network architecture, and setting up things correctly as far as Office 365, Zoho, whatever you're using for email in any organization. Having multi-factor authentication, secure remote access, making sure that the devices that you're using to access town resources that are not compromised and are segmented. For example, using personal devices to access town email, town files, et cetera, et cetera. If I'm a bad guy and I break into Catherine's personal laptop and she's got access to town resources, I might as well have access to town resources if she's using a personal laptop to do that. And these threat actors, right? They're not like 20-year-old versions of me sitting in their basements in Miami, Florida. That's not what they are. They're automated pieces of computer software that are ran by people that are trying to make money as cyber criminals, and they're very successful at it. That's why insurance companies have stopped underwriting so many security or insurance policies for cyber insurance, because they're losing money hand over fist in these situations. So making sure that you guys are protected long term is my goal, and that's what I'm here for, and my team is here for.
Well, what you just spoke about raises a question in my mind.
Joe.
As part of public policy, our boards and committees are expected to use a town email address for any correspondence that relates to public business. That's a lot of people with an email address that they have to access somehow or other in order to participate, in the process. And that, how do you address security given that context?
Yeah, so the way you would approach that is every user that has a town email, which is a town resource in this case, they would need to be securing their email with multi-factor authentication. There is, the ultimate answer that an insurance company would want you to provide, Joel, is that everybody that is using a town email would be accessing a town email on a town resource that is secured, encrypted, and managed and monitored, and so on and so forth. But we know that that's not fiscally tenable for most organizations to do that. So what you do is you mitigate the risk of that as much as you possibly can in those high risk areas where you might have town resources with people of the town with town emails on your email server that could easily fall victim to a phishing email. So with Office 365, there are means to prevent that, to look for fraudulent activities. For example, if you have 100 mailboxes and Renee's mailbox gets compromised, and suddenly your monitoring software sees that Renee just sent out 450 emails. I don't know about you guys, but I can't send out 450 emails in 2 minutes. So I can immediately tell you that that is not good, right? And simply being able to monitor that with the proper tools and the proper software is a huge step. So if you go to an insurance company and you say, hey, we've got 100 mailboxes, we don't have any monitoring on any of them, we don't have any security controls in place, and we don't have multi-factor authentication on any of them, and we have no idea what goes on inside of these mailboxes or these resources, they're not going to write a policy. Oh, 1 second, David. I on a weekly basis have our customers come to us for insurance renewals. 3 hours ago, I spent 2.5 hours on the phone with a client about their cyber insurance renewal. So, David, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you and the board knows that we do.
David, I can't stand a word you're saying. Could you come closer to your mic?
I wanted to make sure that Drew and the board knows that we do have mandated multi-factor authentication for all email users, and also email spoofing limitations set up, so that if someone emails, because this happened when I first started, with something like joelgannon@gmail.com, if that's not a specific recognized email, anything that sounds like one of our names will be blocked.
Yep. So, yeah, so David, what you're talking about is a homograph or a homoglyph attack. There's also typo squatting attacks. So your platform, you can put in those policies in those cases, but if the activity of those mailboxes is not being logged, I could go out and buy a domain right now and pretend to be anybody in this room with an email address, and I would almost bet you a gallon of maple syrup I could get a mailbox into your inbox. And I love my maple syrup, so that's saying a lot. It's one of those things that there is diminishing returns on the value that you put into cybersecurity and IT practices. And I don't expect any of my clients to go out and spend millions of dollars on cybersecurity, because you could go out and spend millions of dollars on IT and cybersecurity, but you want to focus on the spend that has the most impact from a resource standpoint possible. And you're not going to get, and so in cybersecurity, there's implementation frameworks, like the Center for Internet Security has implementation groups 1, 2, and 3. You as an organization are not going to get through implementation groups 2 and 3 without spending way more money than is fiscally reasonable for you to do. But you can take care of implementation groups 1 and maybe a few items on 2 and maybe 2 items on implementation group 3 to be able to take care of the majority of threats and needs that a town or an organization would have, both from a productivity standpoint and a cybersecurity standpoint, right? IT isn't about cybersecurity. We have computers so we can get our jobs done. And in your case, you have email and things like that, so you guys can service town members and, get things like broadband, et cetera, taken care of in those situations. But yeah, the homograph and the homoglyph attacks and lookalike domains and domain squatting, where it's somebody buys a domain that looks just like one of your clients, you can't stop me from going out and buying a domain that looks just like tcnsny.com. You can't. There's nothing that stops me from doing that. And then all I need to do is create a dwest email or a david.west or a david_west or whatever the email format is of the victim, and then send that email in. So David, what you're talking about is a display name. So when someone forges the display name, which really isn't even a forgery, it could just be anything you want in there. You could pretend to be Mickey Mouse if you wanted to. Zoho is just looking for the display name, and it's not able to look through the domain name for a homoglyph attack. Most mail platforms can't. It's just the way they work.
I've gone to several webinars on the subject to try to get somewhat abreast of what some of the problems are and ways of dealing with them. One of the things that was suggested, and one of the ones that I attended, had to do with limiting access to information, so as to reduce the probability of somebody accessing who shouldn't be. So there must be ways of building it in where, depending on who you are, you have access to some, but not all of what can be gotten at otherwise.
Yeah, and Joel, they call that in the IT and the cyber world, that's called least privilege. So the idea is that the role that a person is doing should only have as much privilege on a network or a computer system as they need to do their job. I'll give you an example in my company. We have salespeople in our company. They do not need access to IT documentation of our clients. If we are working with the town of Danby, Renee cannot look up your documentation about what kind of your network infrastructure looks like. It is not something she needs to perform her job and service her clients here. And so the same thing would apply in any other organization. You only need as much privilege as you need to accomplish the tasks at hand. So if you're storing documents somewhere, you want to limit the impact of that access or that account being breached by leveraging least privilege. Comes all the way down to not having administrative rights on a workstation, right? You don't need administrative rights on a workstation to install software and update software and deploy Windows, 10 feature updates and things like that. Your automation software should do that for you. So when you no longer have those privileges, now you're not a threat to yourself when you click on a malware link on a website, or you're searching something on Google and you accidentally click an ad and the ad tells you, oh my God, please call Microsoft now, your computer's infected. And then Laura's nodding her head like, yes, I know that website. I know that website. So, that concept of least privilege doesn't necessarily extend all the way to just information. It extends to everything. So for example, the town board doesn't need to know the password to the firewall on the network, right? Are you going to log in there and make changes to the firewall? Are you going to provision wireless networks, in the town network? So you wouldn't need access to that. So you wouldn't get access to that in that situation. But an IT administrator or a single resource in the organization might have access to that for those situations. So it applies all across the IT infrastructure, not just data, not just workstations. It applies for us as well in how we service our clients in those situations.
Is it reasonable to build that in, or provide for that, or is that something that?
Yeah, it's reasonable to say that, at a high level, we want all of our customers to have a baseline cyber hygiene that lines up with the CIS, the Center for Internet Security implementation groups, the first one. So most of what you're talking about there in least privilege is very easily accomplished, and there's no giant hurdle to get to it. Where you might really, start splitting hairs is if you're working on a project, Joel, and Catherine's not working on the project. Well, does Catherine need access to the data for the project you're working on? If it's all for the municipality, then it might be irrelevant and there's no harm in her having access to it. It's more about privileged access on the systems as opposed to access to data in the context of what you guys might be working on in there. So absolutely, we would be implementing the idea of least privilege for the town of Danby across your systems. We wouldn't be removing access for things that you need to do your job, because that doesn't sound great for anybody, right? If I told Renee, hey, you can't make phone calls anymore because I don't want you to pick up the phone because you don't get the privilege to do that, she can't do her job. And that would be foolish of me. And the same thing goes for you guys to, you wouldn't want to make a decision like that would stop a board member from doing their job. Just like you wouldn't want to say, well, it's best practice if the town email is only accessed on a town device. Well, suddenly now you're buying iPhones and Android phones and computers for everybody. That's not tenable. So you wouldn't take it to that extreme. You would figure out what controls you need to put in place to mitigate the risk of that, and then give those people the least amount of access they need in the email platform to do that. For example, you might want to restrict the ability on an email system for one person to email externally unless they're only on the board and they don't need to do external communication. You might want to restrict their ability to email outside domains. So maybe Catherine only would email internally in the town of Danby and never email externally. Well, there you know, right then and there, we know that if somebody is sending an email, if you see her emailing outbound, then you know that it's not really her, and you're mitigating the risk of her potentially getting compromised by an external resource exchanging emails back and forth with her. I don't know that that's a practical example, but it's just one that, comes up across my head because we have customers where they may have staff that only email internally. And so in that situation, there's no reason for them to have external email address outside of that domain.
Other questions?
I just wanted to ask if you help municipalities actually acquire insurance.
Yeah. I'm sorry, who is that?
Steve,
Steve. Yes. So we work with a couple of partners of ours that are cyber insurance brokers strictly. We work hand in hand with them as our client's IT provider. It is frankly the best way for anybody to get cyber insurance. So we do that absolutely. We do not sell your policy. I do not get paid. Nobody on my team gets paid for selling insurance or introducing you to anybody. It's not what we do. We sit there to make sure that the cyber insurance application, the attestation questionnaires are answered accurately. And if they're not answered accurately enough to be able to get a policy, then we sit down with the customer and say, this is the gap that you need to make up between where you're at and where you need to be so you can get insurance over here. Because a policy will get denied if you are not there. And then once you get the first policy denied, it's very difficult to immediately get the second one denied. So if I'm an insurance carrier and you fill out an application and you say, I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have this, we're not doing this, we don't have an EDR, et cetera, and then you submit the application, the underwriter is immediately going to reject it based on the baseline of the cyber hygiene on the application. And then if you call up an IT company, you say, well, they said I need this, 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 and this, and they implement it in a week, and you go put that application back in, they're going to fight you on that attestation. The inverse of that is when you work with a local agency or a broker that just wholesales your insurance agreements, your insurance policies, which a lot of people do. A lot of insurance agencies actually don't even want to touch cyber because the liability of what they're doing and the fact that they mostly don't understand it. You would answer that attestation questionnaire. And if you say, oh, we have a business continuity and disaster recovery plan and we test it once a year, and then you get ransomware and you go make a claim and they say, well, we're going to send in our lawyers and forensics team, they're going to call an IT company up and we're, somebody else, not us, is going to come in and they're going to go through forensically what happened, the breach, et cetera. And when they find that you were negligent on answering yes, and you didn't have this policy or this written document or this procedure document in the town, or you weren't using this service, they will deny the claim. Even if the service that you did not have has nothing to do with the means of the breach. So hypothetically, let's say you don't have enforced multi-factor authentication. And David, I don't know if it's SMS based or if it's OTP based, but some insurance providers are no longer accepting SMS based authentication for everybody. That's when you get a text message on your phone and you type in the 6-digit PIN into an application because SMS spoofing and cloning is very easy to do. So if you said, hey, I've got MFA, and then you got breached because, I don't know, David's laptop got stolen out of his car, that's considered a breach, right? That's a reportable breach for an organization. And then they go to make a claim and say, well, our data could be out on the dark web. We have no idea where the laptop's at, gone, right? And it's got town people information. Maybe it's got social security numbers, date of births, mailing addresses, you name it, the whole 9 yards. They will come in and say, okay, well, this is what is on your questionnaire. They're going to go through, they're going to examine the environment. They're going to ask us a bunch of questions. They're going to ask us for reports, and they're going to ask you for reports if we don't exist, right? If we don't exist, you're going to be answering those questions. And then when they find out you were negligent on the application, they will deny the claim. And then additionally, when that happens, this is a really, really, really awful spot for anybody to be, is if you have a claim you become uninsurable afterwards. It is very difficult to get cyber insurance after you have had a negligent claim on a breach, right? Where you have a cyber issue, you make a claim to your policy, and then they find out that your questionnaire, you lied on it, right? With whatever those questions may be. So these questions might be, are you actively using a 24/7, 24/7 SOC and SIM? I'm probably, I'm going to make, jump to conclusions here, but I'm probably the one of two people in this room that know what a SOC and a SIM are. And those are the questions that come on these policies. And depending on how you answer these questions, generally, if you answer them no, it's pretty much an automatic denial of a policy. And so as the value of the organization increases, so does the risk. So a $20 million a year company, it's easy to figure out how much money an organization makes generally. In a ballpark figure, I'm going to ransom them for $2 million and not $500,000. So the liability for the insurance company increases. So organizations like towns, counties, villages, any company that can essentially not afford to go out of business, the risk profile is high in that situation because they know that more threat actors are going to attack you guys than, say, the convenience store around the corner from our office. Just the way that threat actors might attack my company more than they would attack, I don't know, if I owned a maple syrup production business, right? And I was running, a lot of maple syrup, right? Like, there's no data there. What are they going to steal my maple syrup? Probably. So that's a good question about the cyber insurance, and will absolutely facilitate you getting insurance. For our companies that we support, it is a requirement. So it is a requirement for a business that we work with for them to have cyber insurance. With the service agreement that we are proposing, we will not support a company because the risk is too great to my organization if you guys suffer a breach and it was due to your negligence and you don't have insurance. Any more questions on that, Steve? I love talking about insurance. So
No, that's good. You answered what I need to know. Thank you.
you're welcome.
David, did you have a follow-up question?
No, I was just gonna answer if he needed to know what kind of multi-factor we use. It's not text-based, it's an app-based.
Gotcha. So you have a OTP. So that's great. That is good. I am happy to hear that. I was not aware that you had OTP on your mailboxes. Is it enforced inside of Zoho, or can I opt out of it?
You can opt out.
Gotcha. So the fact that it's got an opt out, no good.
So I can chime in on that if
Yeah.
if it pleases the court. The OTP is optional, and if you don't have OTP, then you do have to go through the SMS verification. You can silence it for 6 months if you trust that browser, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So
There
our
are
suggestion.
a lot of complaints about having to do that SMS authentication.
Yeah. It's ultimately, and I'm going to speak to everybody in here. Ultimately, it's a requirement, right? It's a pain in the butt. It's inconvenient. It is a requirement to have that little extra bit of annoyance to stop a threat actor from having a heyday in a mailbox. I mean, you look at it like this. There was probably a whole 4 hours of legwork by the threat actor that walked away with $186,000 from Odessa, right? If your 60 seconds of time or 5 seconds of time is not worth that, then I need to know where you guys work because I want to work there too. That's great. And it's having the ability to opt out of MFA is not good. People, we are creatures of habit, right? And we are creatures of laziness. So we're going to do what's easiest for us, regardless of what the policy says or what a document says that somebody write and you signed. If you have the ability to push a button and tell this nagging thing to go away and think, oh, I'm good for 6 months. Well, you know what? Then that means that any other authenticated attempt to your mailbox, to be you anywhere, is going to go through. And it only takes once. It's not well, I'll catch it before it happens. No, you won't. It'll be 400, 500, 600, 700, 1,500 emails. an easy target for anybody. Additionally, some other things when it comes to email security, disabling legacy authentication protocols, POP, IMAP, and SMTP. And that is exactly how you all get your email using Zoho. Probably either POP or Janice, do you know if it's IMAP? I imagine it's IMAP.
I believe most people go through the web, so they're not using a separate client.
Gotcha.
There have been 1 or 2 individuals who needed it to be set up, and I set it up for IMAP.
Yeah. So insurance carriers, they will ask you, I wish I had a recent blank application to share, but they will ask you for your mail system, are you currently disabling legacy authentication protocols such as POP3, IMAP, and SMTP? Because those protocols that access the mailboxes are what the bad guys use to quickly scrape the contents of the mailbox and then send out hundreds, if not thousands of emails at once. Is there a question? My screen changed.
Oh, that's good.
I might have one about that because I don't know what, I'm just going to say it. I don't know half of what you just said. But I'm going to say, since there isn't a way to opt out, I don't know whether I have done the right thing.
But I should clarify, because technically I have to allow you to opt out through your user settings. So for instance, the 1 or 2 people that wanted to use their computer to use their current mail clients had difficulties, and I believe I disabled theirs. So I can name the 2 people that I disabled the multi-factor authentication for.
You needn't do it now.
No, I wasn't planning on it. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
Yeah. So part of our services would take care of that for you guys. That would be our responsibility. And we, for lack of better words, we come into organizations and help them with the security posture that they need to have to protect themselves. And some people won't like it, but you can blame us, right? You can say, hey, the insurance company says we have to do this. We have to have insurance, right? It's basically a requirement. Years and years and years ago, it was like, we're a small business, nobody's going to get us, right? The village of Odessa has 2 people, right? What thinking does that lend to having success for the town or an organization or anybody in that situation? So it's often difficult, these changes for cybersecurity. MFA is only a piece of it. Having proper protocols, doing simulated phishing, participating in cybersecurity awareness training, understanding those risks and mitigating them where appropriate and where affordable is good. Any other questions?
Teresa has a question.
Hi, Drew. I'm Teresa Klinger. I'm one of the judges here at the town. And in listening to you, I'm just a little concerned now. Me and my co-judge do not use a town of Danby email address. We go through the state and Outlook, and we do have a 2-step authentication thing. But I believe my court clerk, and I don't know, Janice, maybe you can correct me. I think my court clerk might have a town email address.
No, she doesn't actually. If she did in the past, it wasn't when I was here. So she did not get transferred over.
Okay. All right. So then with that said, the court does not need to, can I assume that the court does not need to worry about everything that you're talking about right now?
Yeah, if your domain is not part of the Zoho domain, would not be a concern. I mean, the state is going to take care and make mandatory enforcement of MFA. I mean, like, if you're here in my county, in Broome County, I know most of the folks in the IT department of Broome County, it's just not going to happen, right? If you're using a Broome County resource, you have MFA enforced.
Okay.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And even to the point that in some situations, so like if we're managing someone's Office 365 tenant, or their G Suite tenant, and we see failed login attempts, we're actually going to disconnect that account. I mean, we're not going to delete anything. It's just going to be not loggable into, if that makes sense. And then alert our service desk. Hey, it looks like someone's trying to break into Joel's mailbox. Why was Joel just up in Danby, New York, and suddenly now he's in a data center in Texas trying to log into his mailbox? We call those impossible time travel scenarios, where you couldn't possibly go from one location to the next. And so, to touch on Village of Odessa, when we talked to them, they said, yes, we talked to SCT Computers, and they said it wasn't us. They said, can you look? We're concerned. And we did. And what we saw was they clicked on a phishing link in January at some point. And then that same day, there were logins, the same day that we spoke to them about 2 weeks ago, there were logins, right? We all know that Odessa is in New York State. There were logins to this mailbox from Miami, Florida. When we looked up the IP address of this login in Miami, Florida, it belongs to a web hosting company. And then we talked to them, and the customer is a cloud server provider. All we need to know, basically, that means a computer on the internet that was probably paid for, the access to it was probably paid for with a stolen credit card. So even if this victim says, I'm going to call the FBI, and they make a complaint, right, which you should do, nothing's going to happen, right? They're not going to like send the police and raid the bad guy's door, because nobody knows who the bad guy is, right? That's why identities get stolen, so they can use those stolen credit cards, those stolen identities, those stolen methods of payment to launch these attacks. So that impossible time travel scenario is exactly what they had. So if we were monitoring their mailbox and we were monitoring the activity in that tenant, we would have seen, hey, why is this end user suddenly logging into somewhere they can't possibly be, right? You can't travel from New York to Florida in 60 seconds. It does not happen. So that mailbox would have been shut down and locked down at the time, and our service desk would have been alerted, and we would have made a phone call to the client. And now we have the ability to do that with them, which is great for them. But so. Anything else?
This might take a while, and it's compromising their ability to get through the rest of the agenda, but important conversation to have. Thank you, Drew.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anything else, guys? I already had dinner, so I'm good.
Thanks, Drew.
You're
Renee.
welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to chat with you folks
Yeah, I
today.
appreciate it. You guys have a good night, everybody. See ya. Bye.
All right. Janice put the January 3rd minutes. I haven't had a chance to look at them.
I started and I didn't.
Yeah. So we should postpone dealing with it?
I didn't have a chance to look at it.
Yeah, okay.
I looked at them.
I looked at it briefly, but.
Well, that's good.
We're waiting until next month or next meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Warrants.
I assume that the 689.23 was made 689.25. 25. Was that changed? Yeah. Good. Yeah, 25. Yeah. It was 25. Yeah, it was 23 on the thing. And I would like to take 101 off the credit card because it's we don't have enough information to make it clear what's going on. It's really screwy.
Yeah. I agree.
That's February.
So that's remove A101, the credit card. A101, remove A101. Doesn't even have a number on there. It shouldn't be there. Okay, so we'll move that to next meeting. And it doesn't change the total. No, because there is no amount there. I'll move the general vouchers 93, through 113 for $19,055.28, sorry. 19,055.28.
Second?
Second,
Just to clarify, without the 101.
yeah, that total. Right, what we should say then is that we approve
Right,
A
93
93 to A
through
130, excluding
Right.
A 101, right, and then the amount, yes, right. I'll amend that to exclude 101.
It's actually 100. They're not renumbered though, it's just pulling it out. Was that a voucher?
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
A
so I mean,
101, pulling out.
Yeah.
The number.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So there's actually 112 and, you know, but it's still numbered 1 through 113.
That means we have to approve what's written because we want to make sure 113 gets approved, the 113 is
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
So we're approving A 93 to A 113 on this list, excluding
Except
101.
for 101.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I feel more comfortable doing that.
Okay. Ready? Yeah,
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes,
Woodworth,
Yes,
Gagnon,
yes,
I'll move the highway fund vouchers 62 through 66 for $42,138.20.
second,
any discussion? Yes,
Connors,
Yes,
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
yes,
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon,
yes. And there is no water fund this time, right?
right.
Warren,
Wake up.
yeah. Yeah, you are. Would you like to join us at the table or would you like to stand?
Oh. Well, I will probably be loud enough as I normally am. I wanted to just start by thanking everybody who came, spend their time and attention on this subject. It's very important to me. I think it's something we've been talking about and wrestling with for years, and I hope we can come to some sort of decision about this soon. I want to thank the previous committee who produced the original draft of this noise law and all the work and time that they spent on it. I've been asked to introduce and give context for this updated draft of the noise law for the town of Danby. Research was performed into noise laws that have been adopted and are functioning well across New York, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. Hundreds of laws and ordinances were collected and applicable sections were chosen from comparable communities. They quickly start to repeat a familiar basic structure. I can assure you of that. Very soon, they all run together. Most probably because they work and there's sort of a proven method that's been repeated over and over again. Interviews with ADAs and law enforcement steered me towards a mostly subjective law based on a reasonable person standard. Very few laws across the state had significant objective assessment in their laws. Most of the implementations of objective standards were employed where business zones came up against residential areas and required acoustic mediation schemes with objective assessment goals. The section on issuance of permits originally submitted in the draft law has been removed. Out of literally hundreds of noise laws and ordinances collected, just one had a section on permitting. This echoes the sentiment that for 99.9% of the residents of Danby, this law will never affect their daily life. Like the need for most laws, there will be those rare situations where one neighbor may be acting in a manner which is completely inconsiderate of their surrounding neighbors and refuses to either communicate or compromise. A law gives laws enforcement the aegis to engage with a person or persons by whose actions constitutes a clear and present sonic assault on the residents around them. There should never be a situation so untenable as to cause a resident to move from their home just to escape the sonic harassment from a neighbor. There should always be a way to hold accountable those individuals who would diminish the quality of life of those around them. Again, for 99.9% of the residents of the town of Danby, there will be no need to engage with this law. There was some suggestion of a mediation panel which would field complaints and negotiate solutions. In researching what would be needed to implement this plan, it became clear where the idea falls apart. Firstly, those of us who have dealings with town governments are acutely aware of the lack of individuals willing or able to serve on critical committees. This would yet be another unpaid public service with the need to convene at a moment's notice to be effective. Secondly, individuals would require mediation training and certification, both costly and time intensive. Thirdly, and most importantly, mediation would not be legally binding and offer no better solutions than simple communication between parties. The 3 C's, whenever humanly possible, the hope is that when a noise conflict emerges, communication, compromise, and collaboration will diffuse most tension. This is the intended path to conflict resolution. The unfortunate reality is not every individual operates out of consideration and kindness. Most of us do, but there are those persons focused only on their own pursuits to the detriment of all those in their sphere. A safety valve is necessary to get the negotiation back on track. This noise law gives us a set of guardrails for that rare time that after all our best efforts are unsuccessful, a legal intervention is the only way forward. Any one of us could find ourselves in a situation where we need help from the outside, where we find ourselves in a situation that feels hopeless and unrelenting. We adopt laws to head off that misery and to protect every resident of this town, not as a desire to control or interfere in our daily lives.
Nicely presented.
I can answer questions if you have specific targeted questions on.
I have one.
Yeah.
Can you review why you said subjective is okay versus objective? I never thought of it that way at all. And what you said was sort of interesting to me. So I'm a resistant one. So you can count me as one of those. So tell me why.
So I thought about the best way to explain this is in a scenario. If you can imagine a rather increasingly common situation where somebody in the town of Danby might rent out their house during graduation and thus inhabited by a family with a number of boys. Me being a boy, I understand what that might mean. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, all hell is breaking loose and there needs to be just some relief. This is where the core of this law, the basic law, allows law enforcement to come by the house, knock on the door and say, hey folks, can you just turn it down? That's the subjective part of it. That's where it's somebody can come by and say, whoa, okay, let me just intercede and say, this is kind of ridiculous. The part where and there's sort of the time component in that. So from most of these conflicts and most of these interactions, it's going to be somebody's gotten out of control. Law enforcement can step in, and with no law, they have no aegis. They have nothing to stand on. But with a law, they have the ability to even approach somebody and say, hey, can you just turn it down? And that solves most of what's going on. Where we start to go into the objective realm, and this is the complicated part that I will I'll sort of lay it out, the complicated part for you. I didn't want to complicate the law itself, because I think it's going to take some discussion with zoning, planning, town board, et cetera. But where you come across what I alluded to with objective standards is there may be a situation where you have a hamlet close to residence. You may have an agribusiness, an industrial business in proximity to a residential area, and it is no longer appropriate because the frequency and duration of this noise that law enforcement is going to come out and have anything to do with this. At some point, they're going to say, this is no longer a problem. This is out of our field. And there's a place where objective standards are there. But the objective standards, getting into negotiation, communication, and bringing people to the table is not possible without the basic law. When you have the basic law, and we've basically said that if somebody is doing something out of the range of reasonability, okay, now we have to go to the table. Now we can say, okay, let's bring in an expert, and maybe there's a way to mitigate this noise. Maybe it's somebody running a surface planer for a wood processing operation. Can we say, oh, what about a baffle wall? What about sound absorption or diffusion? Let's take a measurement at the point source. Let's take it at the property line. Then we can say, okay, this is what we have. What can we go into negotiation with? What can we get? Okay, so if I do this for 4 hours a day, is that okay? If I do it between this hour and this hour, none of this is possible without the core basic law.
So Warren, who's gonna do that?
I am absolutely happy
You're gonna
to do that. What will happen though is you're going to be faced with a situation with whether there's a law or not,
Right.
and you have.
Yeah.
You've had this very same situation. When you have a law, you can at least start where law enforcement can be involved. There can be a cessation if somebody is really in a miserable condition. They say, I can't sleep. This is significantly affecting my quality of life. Cease and desist. It then opens the door to be able to have some sort of discussion where you can either bring in somebody like me or some sort of negotiating tool, but you have some way to keep those people at the table. When there's no law, somebody can just flip you off and there's nothing you can do about it. So the basic law does not cover every situation, but without it, there's no way to have an addendum. There's no way to carry it to BZA, planning, zoning, some of these other things that might involve other folks in why you might cite a particular business operation or deal with the other residents and stuff.
Yeah.
Without the core law, you can't even get the nuances.
Warren, is there a way to, I'm thinking, it starts right out with a fine. A fine, $200 or whatever. Is there, in you're looking into different options, is there a way to start out with, there'll be a request that you stop. Second will be a verbal warning. I mean, I hate to have some people, oh, Catherine, oh, you're so cute, could you please not do this? We don't want to come back. And Warren, I don't like your hair. $200, it'd be nice to have sort of a gradual increase in punishment.
You
I don't
can
know.
certainly draft such a thing.
Yeah.
It does not exist in any law
Nobody's-
that I saw.
Yeah.
I think that when there's this subjectivity in here, I think law enforcement has a lot of leeway to say, okay, just turn it
Go
down
on,
and
yeah.
you're going to be cool. I'm going to go away. I come back the next day, folks, this is really getting out of, please just do me a favor. I don't want to write this up. I don't want the paperwork.
Yeah.
Just turn it down. They come back on a third day. I'm gonna have to give you a fine.
Yeah.
And I think there's some flexibility in there if you want to draft such a thing. That could certainly be on the top of it. I think that that is built in to some degree because law enforcement,
Discretion.
they have discretion in that particular one to give a warning,
Yeah.
to have that discussion.
Warren, I want to reiterate and thank you for pointing out something that you did. I mean, we've heard from a lot of people who are concerned about the loud party or the mowing the lawn after sundown.
Yeah.
But you mentioned, and it's true, that there are also people who use noise as a weapon of intimidation.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the primary focus of this law. And we just spent a fair amount of time talking about cybersecurity. And I think in general in our society, we are seeing more and more, excuse me, this polarization. And I think that a law like this is important to protect people in our community.
Yeah.
So thank you for mentioning that.
Marty, you have. Could you come up and? They can't hear you.
Hi, Marnie. Is it on?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, no, that's not on. Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the particulars of either the original draft or the draft you're speaking of now, okay? But, which is why I'm already on record saying I don't care. But what I wasn't clear from behind, if I was gonna have a graduation party under this law, I don't have to get a permit? Did I, I mean,
Yeah.
certainly that was an impression I had from something. I don't know if it has any foundation in fact at all. But
You are correct.
Mm.
The sentiment, yes, you got the sentiment
okay, thank you. That was
and the energy of it. And yeah, to just reiterate that point, I think that that was one of the things that I discussed with folks, that by having a permit structure, it put out there almost the anticipation or expectation that you would get a permit. And I think that I wanted to just bring it back to the focus of this is 0.1% of the chronic kinds of situations that you would come across that in almost, graduations and weddings and just getting crazy with your kids, doing all the normal things that you would do around here. You're talking about time and duration. It's not going to be the kinds of things that are just going on for hour after hour after hour.
in the discussions of this where I have been present, some of the sounds that people have had objections to, train whistles, piano playing, like you heard it too. I mean, I'm not making this because I'm in the same room you. I mean, these are the sounds of the kids playing across the house. I love those sounds. They make me feel part of a community. Those are my neighbors. You know, it's part of the economy. It's part of the beauty of my, in quotes, neighborhood. And so my objection was really based on, I don't want to be regulating my neighbor. I love the sound of my neighbors because it makes me feel part of something. And I'm old and cranky and I like to be part of something. Thank you.
To that point, and it kind of struck me as I was reading it. There's something of a cultural thing here. The word unnecessary,
right,
is in there. You know, it to me it reads like it creates an expectation that only necessary noise will be produced, and if you're producing unnecessary noise, it's necessary to mow the lawn, you know, but it's not necessary to, you know, to have a loud party with your kids, or, you know, that would be, grounds, if you were, if somebody objected to, to your doing that kind of thing. excessive, continuous, that makes some sense,
I know, it's funny. I
But the
think it's
unnecessary,
unnecessary too.
yeah,
Right.
But I mean, unreasonable, loud, or disturbing.
yeah,
That-
right, no
but
problem with that.
unnecessary, well, that's.
I think
I don't know.
unnecessary alludes to, you can have a wild party and nobody's gonna pretty much care until the one person at three sheets to the wind grabs a bullhorn and then starts screaming at the top of their lungs. I think that's where it goes into,
Unnecessary.
it's
Well, that's
unnecessary.
reasonable. That's
It's
reasonable.
That's a reasonable way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, unnecessary. I had the same.
Is that language, typical?
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's common and typical. I mean, I'm not attached to it. I mean, if that.
Well, as an example, suppose someone were running a generator when they're not even at their property. I think you could classify that as unnecessary.
Now, what if it's running their freezer and
Well,
keeping their food?
They have no freezer, there's no food, they're simply
But I
running
mean,
it
but that
to
could be
irritate their neighbor.
maybe not in all circumstances, but if
Mm-mm.
they did have.
All I'm saying is it is conceivable that you could have an unnecessary creation of noise.
Oh, sure,
The generator's not plugged into anything,
yeah.
just running.
Yeah.
It's that separation,
I'd
excuse me.
say that's unreasonable. I mean, that's.
Yeah, I would say that was unreasonable too. Right,
Unnecessary.
Being unreasonable.
The use of the word unnecessary provides another way that somebody can, again, raise the issue, and then somebody can come out and negotiate with it. Including negotiate to the complainer, apparently.
That's it. Yeah, right.
I mean, it could be that a neighbor, I'm thinking on my street, let's say somebody decides that they're mad at me because I blew my horn at them because they did something, and then I have a party and they decide they're gonna get revenge, and they're gonna call the cops because there's a party in my house. Or I'm having a fight with somebody in my house because I saw that. We're not allowed to have fight. I'm sorry, but we're not allowed to yell at each other in our houses, and that's the way I saw this. Oh my God, oh my God. The only thing that I heard differently that I get from what you're saying right now, tonight, is that without a law, if I call the police, although I have called the police about noises and they do come,
Sometimes they do.
right. So that you're saying that with just having a law, that then they're more likely to be able to go to that person and say, there is a law in Danby, do you realize that you're really being, or whatever. It's still really uncomfortable for me, but
Yeah.
I get some of what you said. I was noticing the rearrangement of these factors to be considered. And I didn't write it all out because I had to dig out my old one, the one that's a year old, and figured out why were they rearranged. Just curious.
I wasn't looking backwards.
Okay.
This comes directly from peer
Okay.
collection of what's out there and working.
Okay. So
So I basically started from
okay. So I shouldn't
avoid. And it's not truly, I appreciate all the work that was done, but it's a complete rework based on existing
other
and
places. Okay.
comparable communities. I went through a sifting process of figuring out the combination of rural and residential, the population, the size of the town, the general focus of the town, and then that was another layer of sifting.
Right. Well, and another thing that when you talk about what's reasonable or a reasonable person or a person of reasonable sensitivities, if there's somebody who works in the daytime and has to sleep at night, does that mean everybody who lives around them has to? I'm being this, whatever, the pain in the neck, sorry. But some of these things really bother me a lot, so.
It tries to be as general and broad and flexible as possible. But there's absolutely no way that you can cover a
Right,
restriction.
that's
And
exactly
so there's
part
a
of the
hope
point.
that there's discretion on the part of law enforcement. And probably more than anything, there was a piece of unsolicited information that I got from one of these law enforcement people that had been, they have a mayor and trustee system in that municipality. And this person was mayor long enough, their noise law was enacted about 15 years ago. And so that they've got an ability to look back and look forward, and just gave me some unsolicited information that said, you know, we had a whole number of complaints before we enacted the noise law, and post noise law, they almost went to zero. This is without enforcement. This is without anything. It's just, it's the seatbelt effect. It's like, does everybody really think that when they get in their car that there's a cop around every corner? No. But there's this process of like, oh, okay, some attention has been brought to this. There's a legal standard for this. I'm probably going to be, there's less chance I'm going to be a jerk. And so it has that effect, knowing that there is some backstop somewhere. Deterrent effect. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just, the volume and intensity of background noise, what's that?
So that's actually, that goes to both parties. So that's a matter of, if we start to get into this sort of granular space when we're splitting hairs, it's just leaving the door open in there of negotiation that this is all contextual. So if there's a whole bunch, if there's a pretty heavy noise floor already, it's going to skew the discussion about what a particular person is emitting in a particular situation. It's just something that can be alluded to. Again, negotiable. It just leaves little situations where actually either party could argue, it's like, well, the noise floor is already 40 or 50 dB because there's this over here and this over here.
If you want to hold a conversation in my front lawn, there are times a day we have to shout to be heard over the traffic.
One thing I was going to mention was this section here that lists specific exceptions.
Yeah.
And I know in the past, there has been a lot of pushback from community members who, like I said, are concerned that they're gonna go to jail for running their lawnmower. So I think a way forward is to invite more community comment, specifically around the area of what things do you think should be accepted? Because I think most people are reasonable and they have a valid concern that somehow this will be an overstep. So if someone can say, okay, what about a birthday party for my kid? We'll put it in the exceptions. You know, what about if I get married? Can I have a band? We'll put it in the exceptions, as long as you only get married once every few weeks.
It's not gonna go on all day.
And I would hope that that would alleviate some concerns.
Right.
We have several people in our Zoom audience who would like to comment or ask questions. I'm not sure which, but so we'd allow for that. Ted, would you like to chime in?
Sure, let me start my video so you can see me. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for having this coherent and cogent presentation. I think that it was explained very well. And I think that the draft law is a great first draft law. There are going to be some details that need to be dealt with. I'll just give you a couple of them and some suggestions. First of all, right up at the beginning, there's a definition of motor vehicles, which is never used within the document. Perhaps it could be used or removed. Second, also somewhat trivial, there's 9 to 901 there's a gap in there where it's not clear whether, and also at 7 to 7:01, whether the nighttime prohibition is in effect. Basically, you shouldn't leave holes like that. But speaking about daytime and nighttime, personally, I would urge for some more like 8 to 8, but really that doesn't cover reality. There is something called, I think it's called astronomical or civil twilight. And the hours defining daytime should be the more restrictive of, say, 8 to 8 or the twilight. In other words, in the middle of winter, it's dark at 4:30. It is not reasonable to allow shooting until 8 o'clock. So I think you have to be more specific about the times and have it account for the seasons. In the exceptions, I note number 5 and number 6, only the town is allowed to have concerts.
Great.
That just doesn't seem to make sense. Basically, I think 5 could be eliminated and concerts or special events could be, or whatever, could be included in the in 6, which would be the newly numbered 5. And another thing that wasn't mentioned, it's obvious, I don't think you have to say it because the law makes sure it is, but I think it's better off said. Normal agricultural activity within an ag district is protected always. It's not in your law, it's in the state law, but you might as well say it so it's there and it's understood that a farmer can run his tractor at midnight, no matter how much noise it makes, as long as it's normal activity. So those are the comments I had. I really think that this is a great start, and I think that it was well presented, and thank you.
It's also a right to add town, so.
Yeah,
It's just the ag district.
Yeah, just to clarify that a little bit, there's a number of, so the Department of Motor Vehicles, EPA, DEC, and OSHA have their own standards. We came across this with, well, I want to go out and shoot guns with my kids. Well, there are setback laws, time of day, and numerous safety laws that have to do with this that are owned by the DEC. OSHA has limits on exposure to, if your neighbor has a tractor and chooses not to have a muffler on it, you can ask for that to be mitigated. That is not okay. So not everything goes in that respect. So there are secondary laws that kick in here. The DMV actually manages decibel limits on all sorts of things, motor vehicles. So there's stuff that wasn't in here that it just basically says we defer to other state agencies when it comes to these specific things.
Statement like that put in here would affect the law or not? I mean, those statements are helpful.
Sure.
Even just so.
Yeah, I have one somewhere. Yeah, there certain municipalities would actually put that in there, depending on who they can. Certainly.
David.
Yeah, so I'll just share what I've shared before, which is the question of what does a person who feels like they're going to be discriminated against by neighbors, by town government, by police, have in this law as a protection for themselves to know that they aren't going to be harassed by someone. I get complaints all the time from people that are very clearly based on either class or race or similar issues between neighbors. And they might complain about garbage or plants or setbacks or business or noise or any number of things, but it's frequently clear that what's actually at play is something else. If I am a Black resident who lives near someone who I fear has racist-based issues against me, what protection do I have under this law? And I'd also just note two things. One is that there is a New York Penal Code restriction against unreasonable noise, which is Penal Code 240-20B,
Doesn't apply.
the second component under that. And then there also is a process if there's long ongoing noise that disrupts someone's peaceful enjoyment of property, there is a process to sue. And what we heard from the previous person heading up the noise committee is that she didn't like that the onus to pay for that suit was on the person bringing it rather than the town or the person defending it. But there are those two other options. I was just doing a quick look at news articles. Sun Sentinel news article titled, "Deputies Back Off Noise Complaint After They're Told the Sheriff is at the Party," which I don't think is terribly surprising. And I think it's something that people will be worried about if there's no standard other than reasonableness. So I just wanted to put those out there for you all to consider and to think about.
Yeah.
Do you, reply to that?
I think that when you're looking at the hope of this is that it will protect more people than it will put at risk. And at a certain point, believe me, I have the same reservations and support of law enforcement. And at some point, we need to trust that the legal system and law enforcement will do the right thing. I don't think that you can craft laws or deny the adoption of laws in fear that they will not be carried out in a socially just way. If we would be paralyzed. And I think for the greater good or the common good, that we can only move forward with the hope that it will have its intended consequences.
Which, as I said, the potential exists, but we hope that it wouldn't be abused.
And you reassess and you amend.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to find out, and that's putting the onus on the person who's being, the prejudicial attack is being, that person has to be brave enough to come and say something's wrong here, which is hard.
Yeah.
No, we certainly can't trust that all enforcement people do so equally. It would be nice, but it isn't so. So I hear that. I hear what David just said. And I don't know how you put it in the law, but I think we all have to be pretty sensitive to that and all the things that we as town people do.
But we can't make laws based on the assumption that they're bad, because then we would not have any possibility of having any laws, and we wouldn't have any background to support the life we have. So I think what we need to do is, in those kind of cases, just like they're happening all across the country, if it happens, then we have to fix it.
So another thought that I wanna.
No, I just couldn't hear the last couple words.
If
Something gets abused, we need to be paying attention and fix it.
Nice to anticipate if you can, no?
Well, I mean, traffic laws have been abused, right, by racist law enforcement. But are you gonna write a traffic law that somehow prevents that? I doubt it. You have to assume that your law enforcement, that your judicial system will address those things directly. You can't say we're just not gonna have traffic laws because some bad actor might use it in a nefarious way.
I mean, we need, find a way to pay attention and listen and be, hear. Yeah, I remember, a couple of times when we've talked about lowering speed limits, some neighborhoods have said, wow, we're really scared about that because we have a lot of minorities in this neighborhood, and, you're sort of setting them up maybe to be harassed as they have been harassed for a long time. But if we can keep avenues open to, get people's experiences and be mindful of those.
One other,
In your studies, of what other places have done, has that been attempted anywhere to sort of help build in some sort of safeguard against the potential for being used as a weapon, in a targeting a minority or?
Not offered, not asked and not offered. Yeah, that wasn't what I was looking for and.
Yeah.
And it's
I'm
rolling.
just wondering how one would go about it if you were a minority in an urban neighborhood and you thought that the laws are being abused as a way of oppressing a minority.
well, I think the
How could-
flaw in that
how could you
case is
fix
not
it?
the law, it's the
Yes,
It's the
It's the-
enforcement.
it's
the
not the law,
enforcement of the law.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I was going to suggest, because I know that there are concerns
Yeah.
that in addition to allowing a sort of public comment period where people could add to the exceptions,
Mhm.
I think it would also be a thought to pass a law with a built-in sunset clause. So this law will be effective for 1 year, and then it doesn't continue beyond that point without the board specifically authorizing it, which would then force the board to consider at that time, is this effective? Consult with enforcement. Are we finding throngs of wrongly imprisoned Danby citizens? Are we finding that there are fewer noise complaints? And again, I think that's one way I think to address the concern, because no law is perfect. We can't be paralyzed waiting to try to get a perfect law. I think there is a clear need. I think the best we can do is try to implement measures so that if it isn't perfect, there's an opportunity to amend it and fix it.
We can always do that, without sunsetting it, but
But it's more obvious when it's sunsetted,
that's for sure.
and that's why it would be more useful.
Could be.
I mean, we're gonna need to look into the logistics of it. We might, we may be able to do something like, it's another thing that we review every year. But if you pass a law and then, does it cause problems with, law enforcement and other things? If you've got a law that only lasts for a year and then it ends and then you haven't, it doesn't just continue, it's a new law, so it may be confusing. But it's not unreasonable to say it's another thing that every January, it gets reviewed and
We could just commit to reviewing
Right,
it after. a year.
right, and just maybe it's fine, maybe it would be fine, but I can just see the police going, okay, that law is outdated. And then the next day putting, we're gonna get tired of it if we do it every year.
Yeah, sure.
But we could have a public hearing every January about how is it going.
Mhm.
Um,
Probably not in January.
Okay,
February maybe.
No, probably in the warm month when there's more likely to be.
Oh, this is true. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Gary,
people are worried about that.
Gary wanted to comment.
Yeah.
Where did he go?
Gary.
Okay, I just wanted to say the explanation tonight is a lot different than the last draft of this law that I read. I think the fact of taking out somebody having to get a permit to have a backyard party for a graduation or anything and having the town board to approve it 30 days prior to was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah,
And I also want to say that the original law, the fines that they were going to assess people, they were more than what I assess people on a DWI charge in a lot of cases. So I think the fines were way out of line. I think the fact of talking, trying to negotiate with the two people is a much better venue than trying to take a townsperson to court every time they run a chainsaw or ride their motorcycle or whatever they intend to do. But I agree, there should be limits to the hours and everything. And, if it's going to be constant, continuously all day, there should be something against that too. So that's only my thought.
The fine is not an up to, it's a
Thank you.
fixed amount.
That again, that's basically a sample for your tasting. It is fully up to the particular details.
Yeah, I had a lot of problem with that.
I mean, it's not unusual for a lot of, first offensive fine up to, $200 or whatever, which gives the judge some discretion to say, well, in this instance, you deserve it. It's going to cost you $100 or whatever.
Well, the very next day is another thing which puts you
That's
at the
true.
next level for the very next day. And if you're the homeowner and your friends or relatives came to visit and you're not even there, you get it. You didn't even know it happened before you could do
Yeah.
something about it.
That's the one thing that I know if it was, somebody having a complaint about me, I would appreciate hearing, just get a warning.
Yeah.
Bothering somebody.
Right.
And it
I remember
is-
having this issue with the last one too, which is
Yeah.
to say it's the homeowner
Yeah.
or the property owner that's responsible, whether or
Right.
not they're the ones making the noise.
But and this reminds me of something that, the potential harassment issue
Yeah.
that David rose and stuff. In some ways, it's no different than code enforcement
Mhm.
in that maybe, I know it's not 99.9%, but a good percentage of it is motivated by who lives next door and who's going to complain. And who's going to complain that you're doing something you should have gotten a permit for? Who's going to complain about, the noise? I mean, it's going to be your neighbor. And if you don't get along with your neighbor, it's a neighbor issue.
Mhm.
And that can be a look of the draw. But I would like to see, I agree that I think, we need something. And sometimes the police will come out. I know they'll come out for dog complaints. And
Well-
talk, and just talk to the people.
Yeah.
And I know once the SPCA got involved, so, they take it seriously, but,
Well, we do have a dog law.
They came out for, when I
yeah, but
called
that doesn't.
about fireworks that were going on at 10 o'clock every night for whatever
Yeah.
that was last year or 2 years ago or whatever it was. And
Yeah.
it was every night it had or every Saturday night at 10 o'clock for
Yeah.
like 2 months or some, it was,
Yeah.
and it was over coming from West Hampton. One of the problems with some of these noises are they travel
They travel.
according to the geography.
Yes, right.
And so, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
there
I
are
would like-
problems with any law. I
like to
hear
try
what
and-
you're saying about if there's a law, it gives somebody a chance to do something. I get that. And I think a lot of the things that people talked about tonight in regard to this is better than what I've heard before.
Oh, God, yeah, yeah.
And I'm hearing you now say, when you said, when we talked about the amount of the fine or anything, and you were like, this is just the write-up, this is up to you guys.
Yeah,
And
right.
so
Yeah.
that, I'm like, I get this and I'm like, because all these things, so, but the one of them was the idea that, are you telling me I can't even have a fight in my own blankety blank house?
Yeah.
If I yell at my kid or my dogs because they did something horrible, whatever, of course, then I should be reported to the ASPCA if I'm mistreating them, not,
Well,
not
just
to
don't do it all
fine.
day.
Oh, it's continuous, okay.
Unnecessary.
Or put in an exception. I can yell at my kids
Yeah.
and dog.
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel better than I have
Yeah.
over the whole 2 years or whatever we've been talking about. this
Yeah.
stuff. So I guess it means more work on our part to take another look at it.
Yeah.
Appreciate the lots and lots of
Yeah.
time you put into it.
Yeah.
Aren't you happy that we asked you? Aren't you happy that you said that wonderful phrase, Sonic, whatever you said? I was trying to remember those words.
Ted like to chime in again.
Yeah, there was one item I had on my list that I didn't mention, and actually, Joel, you referred to it. I think the easiest way to say this is, there was the day that the state police raided my property and removed a truckload of marijuana plants from it. I had no idea they grew that big. And what I'm getting at here is putting the onus on the owner of the property, even if the owner is not present and didn't know it was happening, is probably not a good idea. In this case, I mean, had the police felt differently, they could have arrested me because it was on my property. Instead, something should be said about permission and or presence. So I don't have to go to court and defend myself. That was it.
Yeah.
Well, I like the idea of notifying. I mean, there's a simple thing like calling up before they came in with those helicopters, but
That would have, if I was really a guilty party, that would have defeated the purpose, but
That's right.
in this
right, I
case,
know if you were, right, but
Yeah.
for noise, you could have it.
right, I could
I mean,
be
I,
out of town.
as a landlord, I'm more concerned about that. I mean, the landlord has a limited ability to respond to a noise complaint if it's their tenant that's the problem. It seems to me that the person making noise ought to be held to account, not necessarily the person who owns the property.
Unless the owner can be shown to have given permission and be aware of what's going on. That's different.
Well, sure, yeah.
Why was that in there, Warren? Did you see that in a lot of places?
It's standard
Yeah.
law. So if you
Owner of
want
property,
to,
the owner of
yeah,
property,
the
you know,
homeowner.
yeah. I
So
don't have a problem with that.
Well, you did a minute ago.
No.
You
no.
said, I'd like to be at least called and said, the people are in your house.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, well,
yeah, no.
that's not what it says up there.
I'm thinking of the, at least once I've had to talk to property, tenants in an adjoining property that we own, to not do fireworks. I mean, like I was mainly because of the horses. I felt bad.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, horses, dogs.
No, homeowners, property owners,
Well,
no,
I've had
especially if they're
Well,
not.
sure they should, but because the thing is, what happens if you have a tenant who's not responsive? I mean, you could, it's not, the property owner doesn't have the ability to curtail the noise.
No, they can get rid of the tenant.
No, not
Well,
that,
they can't
no,
just
no,
get
you
rid of the
can't just get
tenant.
rid of them.
That's
You
not-
can't, that's pretty hard.
Yeah.
You can't kick tenants out without the
Well,
due process like that.
But you can if
Wait.
you're breaking laws, though.
Yeah.
That's another reason why you need a law.
Yeah, yeah. If there's no law, then there's absolutely no way. If there's a law, there's a chance.
If you have a tenant who's selling drugs from your property, you don't need to wait until the lease ends.
No, that's true. I mean, there is that provision in every lease,
Yeah.
that if they're breaking the law,
Right,
Mm.
yeah,
that's cause. Still not too easy to get them out.
yeah. I never had trouble with
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, we just were lucky.
Yeah, I mean, but why shouldn't the person who's
Yeah.
selling the drugs or making the noise be held to, why shouldn't they be held to account?
I don't think this says that they aren't held.
They are held.
it doesn't, there isn't anything that
Yeah, no,
excuses
yeah, I don't see that.
I don't either.
I don't.
Not-
Okay.
To
yeah,
put that in.
yeah. Right,
I
so,
mean, it's normal for people to do crazy things at certain seasons, like New Year's Eve, people,
yeah,
and 4th of July, or
graduation.
graduation, you know.
Put it in the exceptions.
Yeah.
New Year's Eve and 4th of July, anything goes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want to do that.
No, I'm not suggesting writing them in, but I'm suggesting that
Really
when the
depends
law
on the
enforcement
neighborhood,
person
too.
says, well, you know, it is the 4th of July, or how many firecrackers did your neighbor set off? 5. Well, are they done?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I have a neighbor that calls me and says, the kids and I are gonna set off a firecracker or something like that. And I say, thank you very much for calling me,
Yeah.
because then I know.
Yeah,
But I
exactly.
mean, I also, when you talk about sensitivities, you don't want to have the sensitivity. I have a dog that I used to
Yeah.
have to call up my neighbor and say, and we had an arrangement that when he was out throwing wood into the wheelbarrow, I couldn't take the dog out. So I call him up and say, can you stop for 5 minutes? And he did, because that's the way we worked it out.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, and I have a neighbor in a similar situation where she has a dog that gets totally freaked out when there's firecrackers.
Yep.
yeah,
In fireworks, and there was this fireworks thing.
yeah.
And she said, had I but known, ahead of time, I could have taken precautions.
Right.
Right, give them
You
a
know,
draft.
but exactly, but
That's
you know, there's no way of knowing, and then she wasn't willing to confront them because she is. You know.
Well, this was helpful,
Yeah,
even for me.
we've had trouble with, with loud rifle, right, the loud
Yeah.
gun, that, wow.
Okay, so, thank you, Warren.
Yeah.
The question is, where do we go with it now?
I would
What's the next step?
suggest the next
Have a public
step,
hearing.
yeah, public hearing, invite people to come up with exceptions that they think are reasonable. I mean, again, I think the more public involvement
Yeah.
there is around this, presumably the more acceptance.
Yeah,
Many people seem to have concerns. I think this draft really addresses
yeah,
a lot of those.
Yes, but as we've already heard this evening, there are some things that, some constructive suggestions already
Sure.
made.
And we want to hear those.
Yeah, exactly. So we could, it'd probably be more constructive to avoid the formal process of like schedule a public hearing and ask people to comment. Might be necessary to have a public information period, we're asking for people to comment, either in person or writing, so that we would have that input and could take it into account before we actually put something formally forward for consideration.
well, could we do that at the next meeting? Do we have time,
Yeah,
not
we
have a
could.
public hearing, just have a,
No, just
discussion.
an opportunity for people
Yeah.
to comment on,
Yeah.
here's a proposal,
Yeah.
that came out of Warren's extensive work. The board is very interested in hearing, suggestions and comments. And then an opportunity for that. And then we could sort of take that into account, decide, how, to what extent, to modify it before we formally propose it and have a public hearing on it.
yeah,
Okay.
sounds good.
If there are particular things that you're scratching at, I may have verbiage.
Oh.
So if you're
Okay.
honing in on something, there may be precedent in
Yeah.
one of these other things that,
Yeah.
I can just kick back to you. So yeah, just send me questions, or do you have something that sounds like this? Or, you're thinking about DEC or something like that, if you'd like that little tagline. That,
Yeah,
it takes it out of the noise wall.
Right.
Yeah,
I like
500
that
foot
tag on it for
setback.
sure. I'd like
I
that.
think once we've got, comments, huddling with you basically over, how can we address these? Would be probably the most constructive way to deal with them. Agree?
I
Sounds good.
didn't understand anything you said.
Oh, it's like, so once we have gotten public comments and suggestions, I think dealing with them could be most constructively done by huddling with Warren.
Oh, okay.
What have you got?
Wording,
Because you've seen a lot.
Literally a word processor.
Yeah.
I can just look up.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
All
okay.
right. Is it, have you already gone to press pad, or could we put something, quickie in saying?
Yeah,
Thanks, Warren.
All right, yeah.
Yeah,
we-
thank
for
you
the
very much.
newsletter.
Yeah.
We'll have to.
Yeah, because it could,
doesn't glasses at midnight. What are we doing?
can you put like a one thing in, so that we could deal with
What is
it,
it, 8 o'clock?
April, rather, because otherwise, how are people gonna know, other than being on the website?
Well, we thought there might be a change or something that would have to be adapted for that section of for the noise law for that newsletter.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, yeah, it could be just a little extra tag on what I wrote.
Sounds good.
But what is the little taggy thing you're gonna be? What are we doing? Are we going to do this at a meeting?
Yes,
Okay,
that's what we
next
said,
meeting?
next meeting, right,
Okay.
April 4th. Next
No, I
regular
think
meeting.
it's the 7th or something.
Is it the 4th?
No, I think it's 4th.
that's pretty soon. I
Yeah,
think
it is.
that's really soon.
Well, sure, it's 2 weeks,
It's 2 weeks.
but it's right, but
If the
people,
newsletter doesn't get to them, that's only a few days after the newsletter.
The newsletter should be mailed on Monday. We should get it next Wednesday. That's a week ahead.
it's about a week. Well, yeah, about a week.
6 days.
It's either that or 3 weeks. The next week.
I like 3 weeks, but up to others.
3 weeks is fine too.
Well, what do you think?
I'm fine with that.
Good week.
All right. I mean, it also gives people, I mean, we'll make sure as soon as it's on the website.
Yeah, it's already
we can,
there.
You know, encourage,
You can-
you know, there could be something on the website saying,
Yeah,
you know, get ready to think of.
That's
things
not
to
as
add.
effective as something that goes to everybody, because not everybody
no, well,
looks at the website.
although
No, I
I
know, but-
mentioned that if the text is
I
on the
don't-
web.
they don't need
Oh,
to.
yes, I would say that, yes.
It's still, there are a lot of people who do look at the website, so.
Yeah,
that would
and
be
we can
good.
direct people there.
Right.
They're going to say, you know, the board dealt with this. There's a draft for people to react to, and the
Right.
opportunity to do is going to be on April 19th.
Right.
If that's what those of you might want to do.
And if people don't have access to the, you know, the online stuff, they could come here and get a copy.
Yeah, that's true too.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Do we need to formalize that with a vote, or do we?
yes.
You know what?
I move that we invite the public to provide input into a proposed noise law,
Well, the proposed.
the proposed noise law on April, whatever the hell it is.
19.
Well, they can, no, sorry, but I thought we were inviting them to send comments up until and include that
Yeah.
because we don't want to say, you can't say anything about it until then.
No, but that's the opportunity for participation and
between now
discussion
and-
about it's going to be
Between
on
now
on the
and
19th.
April.
People can submit
Discussion on
things in
the
writing, or they can show up, or, you know, whatever they like, you know.
Is it the 19th, did you say?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okey-doke.
Can someone please repeat that? What's being moved? There was a lot of.
Yeah.
uncertainty.
The motion was to invite the public to comment on the draft noise law that will be available on the website, and to put, and to have this invitation appear in the town newsletter about to go out.
And was it to accept comment until a particular date?
Well, up to and including, the 19th, when we'll be hearing from people in person if they'd like.
Okay.
Did you want to present a fairly finalized version? It's just backwards engineer some time to gather those and turn that into a final law. If you wanted to back that up however many days so that you presented a formal law.
I don't like that
Or
word
would you
final.
go
but-
to take comments until the 19th, and then it will be the next meeting to produce.
That's what we're looking at.
Yes,
Yeah,
So we're giving people basically 3 weeks almost to read it, think about it, comment in writing if they want to, or decide to come to the meeting and offer their comments in
Yeah.
person, either by Zoom or here.
somewhere in there, I think it would be good to really point people to the Article 3 exceptions
Yeah.
list, and to encourage people to add to that. If, you know,
To ask
or to-
questions about,
to-
what does that mean? I mean, sometimes if you just get the chance to ask, what do you mean by this? And then there's an answer,
Oh, yeah.
that's really helpful.
yeah, but I also think, I mean, that, I think I agree with Steve, that I think that if people have, that a lot of people have specific concerns, I won't be able to mow my lawn. You know, if I have to go to work at 6 AM, I need to snow blow my driveway at 5, you know, so,
there's,
you know.
there's a printer tomorrow morning, okay?
I can't hear you.
It goes to the printer tomorrow morning.
All I heard was
Yeah.
tomorrow morning.
It-
Goes to the printer
The
tomorrow
newsletter goes to
morning.
the printer tomorrow morning, so we don't have.
I don't have 3 days to write.
We're not asking you to put all this in. That's nothing, well, she's only
Could be on the
talking about,
website. I mean, it could be
Yeah.
on the website,
right.
you know, to focus, to focus on that.
This is still discussion, I think.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, well, we're kind of, do we have a second to that motion yet?
It was my fault. I interrupted before we had a chance.
You want a second it?
Second,
Okay, now we have a second. We're talking about the motion. The motion was to invite the public to comment between now and the 19th, either in writing or they can show up in person if they want to. And we'll go
Pick
from
up
there.
one Here, pick up a copy in the town hall.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that.
And
We could,
Yeah.
you want to add that?
Yeah.
Yeah, copy, either, well, they'll have that invitation in the newsletter anyway, but copies are available either, it'll be on the website. It already is, but we can link it more prominently. And then it can be available to the town clerk if people want.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? We're ready. Okay. Oh, Janice, are you still there?
Still here.
Yeah, I guess we're ready to vote on that motion.
Alrighty. Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yeah. We have run over our 2-hour limit. So we need a motion to continue the meeting.
So moved. How long?
Oh, 2 more hours?
No.
Nope.
I didn't think so. How long would you like?
Well.
There are some key things we need,
There's some things.
there's
that
some things we really need to get done.
Right.
We have a couple of options here. One is we could maybe, rather than adjourn the meeting, continue the meeting tomorrow or, the day after tomorrow or something. Pick it up where we left off and get through the rest of the agenda. Or we could schedule another meeting, or we could see what's most important to get through and simply bump the rest of the stuff to April.
I
Thanks.
move that we continue no later than 9 p.m.
That's a 45 minutes.
Yeah, 45 minutes. Yeah.
Let's move fast and try to
See how far we get?
earlier than that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
lots
move
to do.
fast.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So we have a motion in a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Was that Leslie?
The vote was to, the motion rather by Steve was to continue until 9.
No
Got
later.
it.
No later than 9.
Well, until 9 or whenever, or we get done sooner.
And then Leslie seconded.
Yep.
Yeah. And we're ready to vote on that.
Yeah.
Connors, Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg, Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes. All right. Up next are the secret reviews. The cannabis retail law and the development drainage district.
Okay, so the correspondence thing is gonna be next meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Already bumped on that one.
I didn't hear you on that one.
Okay. David.
We go.
Oh, folks. So you have all had since last meeting, the draft part 2 and 3 of the seeker, as well as the town's part 1 for the cannabis law. The draft, and this is under the specific guidance of the town attorney for the town. But ultimately the town board is the lead agency and needs to agree with this. Has selected no or small impact for the 11 questions on part 2.
Yep.
Does anyone have any issues with those and want to consider adjusting any of those to a moderate to large impact?
Nope.
No. Part 3 has been filled out. If the board has read it, you can entertain and you're comfortable, entertain a motion to check the bottom box that you've determined based on the information and analysis above and any supporting documentation that the proposed action will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts.
If I did read this was a while ago, but
would you like me to read through it?
You mean the paragraph?
Yeah,
You see it on there.
I could see it. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to read it, that might be helpful.
Okay.
Go fast.
Yeah. read
No
fast.
moderate or large impacts are expected or created, as this is a zoning amendment relative to a new New York State permitted business that the town has some citing authority upon under local land use and zoning laws. And the uses are similar to a myriad of additional uses already regulated, such as general retail and alcoholic beverage consumption businesses. A local law will not, in and of itself, create these impacts, but nonetheless, the lead agency has undertaken to examine the amendment in light of 6 New York Code of Rules and Regulations 617.7C and determined that the primary potential impacts appear to be odor, traffic, and public safety. Most of these impacts are heavily regulated and thus mitigated by the mandated New York State permit system. To the extent clarification was needed, this local what?
It should be law, I believe.
Should be law. This local law does implement supplemental site planning, including for signage and odors. Given these tools and potential impacts, and the fact that each such use will be subjected to site plan review and a site-specific environmental review, the lead agency has determined that this law provides for valid mitigation tools to prevent impacts from becoming moderate or significant. Atop these findings, a full environmental review was undertaken upon a town-wide basis with the zoning amendments in 2022, and a review of the findings and supplemental data and mappings then undertaken confirms the above analysis. An apt summary, I think.
Sounds good.
So I move that we thus find, which is indicated in box, the second check box, that we determine that there is in fact no significant environmental impact.
Second.
Okay, Pat jumped first. Any discussion? Okay, Janice.
Connors.
Yes.
Hang on, I'm not in the right place. Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
and Gagnon.
Yes. Where are we then? Or should we then schedule a public hearing on the
We
draft law?
scheduled it.
We did schedule
We
it?
scheduled the last meeting,
Okay. And when's it going to be?
next meeting.
Next meeting,
Yeah.
okay. So
Yeah.
that was already scheduled.
That was already scheduled. Next
Okay,
meeting
good.
now.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yep.
Okay, so then we can move on to the next one, which is the review of the South Point subdivision drainage district. David, present your screen share again.
Similarly, the board has had the part 1 and draft parts 2 and 3 to review since the last meeting. At the recommendation of staff, all small or no impact may occur have been checked for the 11 questions. And then for part 3, again, there's an explanatory paragraph.
Right, which I can probably read better with my glasses. This action proposes to benefit the environment and protect nearby surface and other water bodies by undertaking to manage the subdivision's stormwater and facilities pursuant to a plan that was laid out and funded in 2005, all pursuant to a SWIP, the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, and a SPDIS, is that the State Pollution Discharge Elimination System, is it? General permit issued for the subdivision. As the infrastructure already exists and the only disturbance will be maintenance, repair, and inspection reporting related disturbances, as the overall environmental impacts will be positive, the town board, as lead agency, has determined that there are no impacts or only small negative impacts anticipated from this project, all of which could be mitigated by project and construction repair management in compliance with stormwater laws and existing project SWIP. And then we would check the second box. That there's no significant adverse environmental impact. I move that we so do.
Second.
Any we vote? Okay. Janice.
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes. Which does bring us to the next item on the agenda, which is scheduling the public hearing for that. Would you want to do that at the April meeting?
The first or second?
Yeah, first or second?
April.
First,
The first April meeting, right? Well, is there time enough? Yeah, there's time enough, right?
yeah, there is.
I move that we schedule a public hearing for the April 4th town board meeting. for the South Point subdivision drainage district number 1.
Second.
So the April 4 meeting,
April 4.
What's that?
April 4th.
April 4th.
at 6 p.m.
Yeah,
Moved again by Gagnon and seconded by Weisberg.
Joel,
yes.
can I jump in and suggest that our attorney prepared a resolution that only needed built into it that date, which I have done and am sharing on the screen. So this is the draft order.
Wow.
Resolution and order of the town of Danby calling for a public hearing upon the public interest order for the formation of Drainage District 1 for the South Point subdivision and making negative declaration of environmental impacts under seeker. So this, we looked at it last time.
And I just forgot.
Yeah.
So I amend my motion to read that this is what we would be approving. Which includes the setting of the public hearing of April 4th to 6th.
It says April 6th in the document.
Does it?
Yeah,
We should change that into document then, David.
I saw it on the, I just saw it in there, but it slipped away, so it was too fast.
Here,
No, it says 6 p.m. on April 4th.
Okay,
it does. Okay.
I thought I saw April 6th, but on one section, but as long as it's checked and you're right, that's fine with me.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
where is that?
that part's right on number 5.
You filled it in, right?
Yep,
Oh.
It's in 5.
yep,
It's in April 4th, April 6th.
yep. Good.
Have we filled in the blanks appropriately now?
Yes.
I don't have my blanks. so,
Okay. Ready?
Is that my cue?
Raise your vote. Okay, go ahead.
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes,
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes. I propose that we defer the next one to the next meeting.
Okay.
I did share a list, so something to look at in the meantime.
Yep. Can you send us the list? He did.
I did,
When?
a couple of days ago. Yesterday, maybe it was yesterday,
I don't know. I have.
recently. A couple of days ago.
what are we talking
The
about?
dates,
About
it's been
goal setting
updated.
thing?
No, the goal setting, yeah. Right. I sent you a link to it a couple days ago. Yeah,
Project wish list, March
Project wish list, right.
2023.
yeah.
Huh.
Anyway, it's we need to spend some quality time on that,
Yes, yes.
and I don't think we could do it now.
No.
Workplace violence threat assessment team charge and membership. There is a resolution proposed for this.
Hey, can we, before you do that, can you send that again?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's in work drive.
Can you just send it again?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's in,
Oh, it's linked to the agenda now? It wasn't.
It was linked to the agenda late today, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I got it.
Okay,
Okay.
so I can find it there.
yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a resolution. Could you, somebody screen share it? Let's see.
Are we on
What are you doing?
9.7 now?
Yeah.
There you go. That's the drafted late in the day. This is fairly new, but it's not very long. I move this resolution, which would appoint Laura, Steve Courtwright, Catherine Hunter, and Tyler Jordan of the Highway Department to be the members of the Workplace Violence Threat Assessment Team for 2023, and basically charge them with at Laura's convening to evaluate what's been accomplished and develop a scope of activity for the year to propose to the town board at the April 4th meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, yes.
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes,
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes. Okay, short-term rental survey. Shared with the agenda was the first draft. And it's called draft 2, but the first draft was what David originally did, and the second draft was what Leslie suggested as an alternative, or different anyway. So there are a couple things to talk about here. One is what the content, and also how we're going to deal with it, and in what time frame. David, well, you made some good points, Leslie. David had some concerns. It would be nice to address those concerns. I asked him if he could, propose something concrete, but he didn't get to it.
I mean, I added some things that I thought.
To what he had.
So that,
to your draft.
he was to my draft, yeah.
Yeah.
And are your additions in what's linked to the agenda, do you know?
I have absolutely no idea. I mean, I had added some things to number 5 that were.
It looks like they're in there.
Yeah, okay. I mean, his concern was that the survey could lead people to believe that the people collecting the information were, against short-term rentals. So I picked out some trainings I had gone to, things that were listed as positive things.
Yeah.
Short-term rentals.
That
And
was
I
indeed
added them.
a lot of the concern. David, you want to speak to how to address the getting balance to it?
Yeah, I had a few other suggestions, and I started working on it, track changes, and I think it was just getting a little too complicated. I had a lot of other stuff to do. But my concern is that I feel like it still reads in a way that seems like it's coming from a perspective of starting with the idea that short-term rentals are bad. It's been improved. I think there's some more things that could be improved. I think number 2 can be combined with number 5, that we're asking very similar things there. I think number 3 could be the second question. I did suggest that you remove a differentiation between homeowners and renters, so that you don't appear to be discriminating against renters.
How would you be discriminating against renters by asking them if they're renters?
Well, why would you want to know that if someone was a homeowner or renter rather than just if they were a resident?
Well, it's only renters who give one response, and all homeowners who aren't renters give a different response. That would be important information.
It sounds like, and I want the board to be careful about saying that the feelings of homeowners would be more important than the feelings of renters. They're all residents.
Well, yeah, I agree. Some of it, well, I don't care. We can scratch off that. That doesn't.
I actually think it's
I think
helpful
it's important, but
information.
it's all right. The number 2 question was asking people, one of the things we keep hearing from different people is that there's no problem. There's never been any concerns and nobody's complained. That's not entirely true, but there's no place where that information has been collected. And that's what I was hoping to get with number 2. What have you personally experienced, which could also have been, I have not experienced any of these issues. But asking people what they've experienced is important. We don't have that information. And that was one of the things I was hoping to get from, asking people questions, not just sort of, what do you think, what do you think it's going to be like, or what is your experience? And I assume a number of people will be saying, I have no experience. But in your own neighborhood, not like while I'm renting in Maine or something.
Right. Also, I would say, I think number 2 is fundamentally different than number 5. So I would want to keep them separate. I think the idea of moving number 3 before number 2 maybe makes sense, but I would not want to merge the current number 2 with the number 5. Although one comment I had about number 5, in my own mind, I'm not clear on the difference between neutral and not important. So
Yeah.
maybe neutral could be somewhat important,
Don't care.
very important, somewhat important, not important.
No, we need, say those again?
Very important, somewhat important, not important.
That would make more sense.
Well,
Neutral
maybe
doesn't.
why not?
I don't.
Maybe sort of not important. Like don't care is what.
Isn't that the same as
You know,
not important?
Not important is.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
Well, you don't
It's
think
just
it's
good to
important.
have a middle answer, because right now either you're neutral or it's very important.
Yeah.
I feel like there could be some things that are somewhat,
So
Yeah, that would make more sense.
somewhat important.
sure.
One thing that you're not getting there, not collecting, is people who feel like it's very important that this is not in the law.
Yeah, that you're right.
Say what?
That it's important to them that the law not do one of these.
Well, I think that would be the not important.
Yeah. We'd be knocking off not important to everything.
David,
Or-
David, say what you just said again.
I said that this is a good set of questions for somebody who wants a law and you want to
Yeah.
know what things they think are important to have in it. It doesn't do a good job of someone who is afraid of a law and wants to say what things they definitely would not want in it.
Huh, so somebody
Yeah,
who wants to have or has a short-term rental, they would say it's very important for the town board to consider economic benefits to local businesses or
Right.
increase income for property owners. They'd be checking off those, that's very important. Increase short-term lodging supply. A possible increase in room tax. I mean, I know there's not as many positive. I pulled out all the positive ones I could come up with from the trainings that I've gone to. There were, there are, I know that there are concerns about sounding a certain way, but there's a reason why there's so many of these surveys online. There's a reason why so many towns and cities have enacted laws. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And I think, we maybe don't have information about how it's impacted Danby or how much of a problem it is. But to me, this survey is an attempt to find out, has it been a problem? Is it a problem? Do people care? And, it'd be nice to find out.
No, I mean, I think we're close and I think it's worth trying to finalize this so we can get it out.
That's what Pat's saying.
Yeah, but not tonight. I mean,
Not tonight.
not tomorrow. Not the ones going out tomorrow.
No,
It-
no.
So it's really, we have, well, that's the other question, is how's it going to go out? If it goes out as a separate mail, it can go whenever we get it together to go. If it goes out as a insert or addition to the newsletter, then it won't go out until the next issue, which we've got a whole month to do that. Well, not quite, 3 weeks anyway.
I mean, I think it would be nice to have it as a separate thing, just to draw attention to it.
Yeah, I do too. Not to mention that, well, it's basically 3 pages. One is, well, I was talking to Dave about this afternoon. It'd be good to have 1 page that would sort of preface it. And then have the survey be like 2 pages.
Well, there is a paragraph at the beginning. I mean, I don't know, Pat, maybe you know better. Is there a big advantage to 2 pages instead of 3?
Well, it's on the question and,
You're back sheeting.
right.
So if it's 3 pages, 1 page has got to be for, at least half a page has got to be read for addressing
Oh, that's right.
labels and stuff like that.
Right,
anyway.
exactly, right. So, I mean, right, exactly. So,
So if it's 2 pages, you have less than 2 pages, because you have to put the address in.
right, you only have a page and a half. There's no way we can do that, unless you're making really small
Okay.
print. So, 3 pages would actually work really well, because you'd have the preface, and then, and that would take half a, that could be 1 side, and then you got at least 2 pages for the survey itself that way. And then you need practically 1 side just to do the, addressing and whatnot.
Well, half of 1 side.
Half
Right,
the
but
side.
the other
So
thing is
what
that-
would you want in a preface that's not in those 3 introductory paragraphs?
I don't know that you wouldn't want any, I think we'd want all of that and maybe a little more.
Right, that's what I'm asking. What else would you want?
David, could you speak to that? Should be kind of your idea.
Sure, you might want information. I'm sure people are gonna ask, how many do we have? How many, what is causing the board to take this up? What have other towns done? What is Danby considering? Things like that. I think you could take a page, would give people a good amount of information. It was really tight trying to squeeze in what we've got in there, because we were trying to keep the original to 2 pages with the explanation, but there's not enough explanation.
The more useful thing is someone's gonna fill out a survey, rather than making what you want to say about it as minimal as possible, so that especially people don't even understand anything about it, they don't have no context to put it in. So
Right.
it's better to have as much context as you can.
I think that would be the advantage, would you be,
Sure.
why is this coming to me? And why a survey? Here's why we're concerned. I mean, here's why this is an issue. Here's how we decided to deal with it, and we need your input. It's a survey, please fill out the next 2 pages.
Well, you already said 2 words that shouldn't be in there. One was concern and another was issue. You already colored how it's
This is
going.
not the wording. We're
I
not
know, I'm
talking about
just
the
being-
wording now.
Yeah.
Okay, I
and
know,
that's-
but
that's
I'm just-
definitely not the wording.
Yes, if we're talking about.
Well, I mean, we do have to tell people, why are we doing this?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's not because we just decided to do it for the fun of it.
And it's important to also say that this is the context, and we are really seriously interested in getting your feedback.
Yeah,
It will help us dramatically.
so I mean, I agree, Steve, that I think we're pretty close. I'm not so sure we can get it all together tonight, but,
Okay. Well, it's not gonna go in the newsletter this time anyway.
right,
Right.
yeah,
It's gonna be a special mailing. So,
could be, Are we willing to try to get it together? No, there's no reason why this couldn't be worked on outside of the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
I think, if Leslie and David in particular could kind of come up with a sort of a 3-page version of this to bring back to the board at the next meeting, we can take it from there.
Sure. The one thing I would add, I mentioned last time, I think it would be really good to have a digital version of this
Yes.
that
Oh, yeah,
people can access.
Right.
And I'm happy to help. If other people feel like they can do that on their own, that's fine too. But I think it's important to include that.
Well, the huddle could result in here's something that could get run by everybody for feedback before we actually go. In other words, it doesn't have to be a finished product to drop to the meeting without any opportunity for any of us to weigh in on it before the meeting. if the two of you could come up with something that then you could then run by the rest of us and we'll say, oh yeah, great, let's put it on the agenda the way it is, or this could be added, it would be better or whatever.
And I agree with Stephen, if you're willing to help with the digital, I'm not saying no.
Me either.
I did have one more question for the board.
Yeah.
Last meeting, you suggested adding a field for address, so you know you don't get more than one from the same person. Do you want that?
I think that you said, do we want to try and make sure it only comes from one person at a residence? Is that what you're asking? It's hard to understand you.
Yes, at the last meeting, one of the things the board suggested asking is where someone lives, so that you know, someone doesn't fill it out 300 times.
Yeah. How do we prevent, duplication?
So add it to the list, like, what road do you live on, or, I mean, you want?
I think you want a specific address.
Yeah, put the address down. There's not a problem with doing this. I don't see a problem with doing it. We're not paranoid about.
I think some people are paranoid. They won't fill it out, but they probably have a
can't.
feeling.
Then they can go online. But filling out 5 of them.
Oh,
That was the issue, right,
Yeah.
which would not be helpful. Let's see. The question is though, is it just address? If 2 or 3 people live at the same address,
You might have 2 or 3
are
different.
they not allowed to,
Okay.
only one person per address? Is
I
that what,
think anyone who lives at an address is entitled to their opinion.
then do we want name on there as well?
I don't think we want to say only one response.
I don't either.
Because
I
people
think
might not
it could be-
necessarily agree.
right.
Yeah.
Some of the people who get down the mailing and stuff, I mean, what if these things end up as property owners and they live in Newfield? Or they live in Ithaca?
Well, if they're property owners, they still have a right to have an opinion. on
That
property.
was one of the things that would be useful when we look at, we have that on the list, property owner. Right. I assume that's different than homeowner and resident, property owner means they don't live there. I just. No, my question is, there's homeowner and resident, and then there's property owner. My assumption was looking at that the property owner means they own property but don't live here.
Well, I was assuming that you could check more than one thing, because you could be property owner and,
Check all that apply,
yeah,
yeah.
right.
But we can just add.
Not an either or,
I'm not
it could be both.
worried
ends.
about people being dishonest.
Well, I mean, the question worth asking is there some way to ensure that we're getting unique responses?
Right.
I don't know how you do it. but
Probably not.
It's worth
I think
asking.
the address is the best
Yeah, I
way.
guess we'll just leave it at that, yeah.
It'll at least prevent someone, sending in 100 of them.
Yeah, right.
The 100 might look a lot alike, but.
Yeah.
Perhaps you,
We're gonna have to
perhaps
get
the two of you can
two-factor
arrange that.
authentication.
We'll figure out what-
We're gonna have to get 2-factor authentication. on
Yes,
every-
yes.
Okay.
So, game plan is to have Leslie and David come up with the draft, run it by the rest of us for feedback, so that whatever that ultimately comes out of that comes to the board at the April 4th meeting.
Yeah, like 10 minutes.
Yeah, we're getting there. Let's see.
Are we there?
No. IT and cybersecurity provisioning follow-up discussion.
We don't need to just, I think we should.
We did a pretty thorough back and forth, but we know the question is, next steps, but,
Yeah.
Hunt on that for the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Board assignments for clerk audit. At some point, we need to do a clerk audit.
Yeah, a couple of.
We didn't think about, I haven't given a moment's thought to who might be willing to do it.
Matt and I are supposed to do the court, so.
Yeah, that's right.
somebody else-
I can't hear, everybody's muffled, but I was gonna say that you've already appointed somebody to do the court audit.
Yeah, that's what
Right,
Leslie
that's what I
just said.
Yeah.
We got the court, sign that, but we don't have anybody to sign to do the
Well,
clerk.
what does it mean to do a clerk audit?
Well, there are, essentially, it's a, yes, that's right. There's a guidance document that's provided by the controller's office that you can use as a template for how it's done. But it's essentially just looking over the shoulder of the, whoever it is to ensure that they're doing it the right way, basically.
Well, I'm happy to be part of that. I don't want to be the only one. I've never done one.
Yeah, it's nice
before.
to have a couple people.
I can work with Steve.
Okay. So I move that we ask Steve and Catherine to be our clerk audit team. Anybody want to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Yes.
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes,
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
Teresa's not here anymore. She sent us an email. I spoke with her. What came out of that was the seniors are asking if they could have more money added to their budget so they could do a third trip, because they're finding it is much more expensive to hire the bus to go where they want to go. So I think it's about $1,200 they'd like to add more to their budget. And I said, well, where were you at budget time? But so, well, we went 2 years without spending it. True, in 2021, everything shut down. The seniors didn't spend their money. So what happened to that money? Well, it went to the fund balance. But, we took that into account when we formed the budget. They asked for the same $5,000 in budget season, and that's what's in the budget. So, do you want to entertain an off-budget? It's a request that we'd have to either find some money elsewhere in the budget to transfer to them, or pull it out of the fund balance and add it to, and that's.
I would prefer that we have something in writing, an explanation, and something in advance. So where the possibility, and I think that the real problem is setting precedent. When you argue that, well, we're getting extra this year because we didn't use it last year, but next year that's not going to be what's saying. Next year it's going to be say, oh, we had 3 this year, so that's what we should have next year.
Yeah.
I would also say Laura sent us that budget sheet for the highway department.
Yep.
And this is an example where it would really be helpful to see that for the general.
For the general fund, right?
So I wouldn't do anything if we have more information.
Yeah, you can comment, Laura, if they unmute you.
So
There you go.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, a bit before this meeting, I did send out something for the general fund. So you guys do have that. Yeah, so I see what they're asking. They went a couple of years without spending any of that money, and we had budgeted 5,000 each year for them, and they didn't do anything for about 2 years. So then they've got another 5,000 for this year. We just had kind of continued on with that. So they're probably just asking if they can do a little bit extra this year, since they didn't spend what they had in the previous 2. So that wouldn't mean that say you gave them $1,200 more, that wouldn't mean that would be an example for next year, making it 6,200 instead of 5,000. I think that they're just thinking they just want to play catch up a little bit and do a few extra things because they're feeling like they've got that opportunity to do that now that COVID's kind of subsided a little bit, and they wanted to do a few extra things.
No, I have no confidence that what that would mean is that they wouldn't be asking for $6,200 next year.
Set a precedent. Maybe
Yeah.
not.
Well, they might. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just just
Yeah.
saying, I was just commenting, that there is as you were asking, Steve, there is an analysis of those general fund numbers, and that, you know, it would just be up to you if you want to entertain a little bit more this year, or however they might want to structure it. I don't know.
I mean, I'm thinking that, you know, I would be perfectly happy to entertain a request for more money, but the time to do it is in the budget season, not, you know, after the budget's all put together and we revisit. I mean,
we had other things.
we do this too much already, in my opinion, where we have things come up and it's not in the budget, and we end up pulling money out of the fund balance, adding it to the budget.
Didn't we do that last year with the seniors?
Why, add money to the budget?
Wasn't there something that was over?
No, it turned, that was a mistake. They
Okay.
yeah,
that was
no,
a mistake.
they underspent the budget by a little
Right,
bit.
yeah, they really understand.
Yeah.
By a lot.
Laura, I'm not seeing the general fund budget, just the highway one.
I had sent it out in a group email. So I sent it out, oh, I don't know, I'd say about 4:30 or so, 4:30, 4:45 when I had it. And I put a little message in there too that I didn't have the payroll in, but payroll will be coming.
I don't
Well,
see it.
You don't
mean,
see
maybe-
it there? Well, maybe I set up the link or something and put it in there and didn't hit send. That's a possibility. I had a lot of things going an hour before this meeting, so.
Well, yeah, no
okay.
problem. It's just that.
But anyway, they have spent nothing this year so far. So they have $5,000, if you're looking for that specifically. They do have $5,000 in their budget, but they haven't spent any of that this year yet.
Not only have they, but they can't until we get a contract in place, that we don't have it yet.
Gotcha.
I mean, there were other groups that didn't the youth program not spend a lot of money? The pond program didn't spend money, right? Because
Yeah,
it was, you know, I
we
mean,
shut down, yeah.
it's just kind of a funny slippery slope.
Yeah, I
to
agree.
Slide down. I mean, the most.
It should be taken into account at budget time. You know, if people say,
Right.
you know, we're coming out of the pandemic and we're
If
really,
they want to come to us with a specific request, like Pat said, if they, towards the end of the year, if they, have spent their $5,000 and want to do, want $150 or something.
That's a good way to look at it. That's a good way to look at it.
Should be in writing. We should get a proposal in writing with explanation
Yeah.
why
It's increased
and why
funding.
it's unique.
Let us know what, how
Yeah.
much, what
right,
for. I
for
mean,
what? And $1,200 is a 24% increase.
All I heard was increase.
24%.
$1,200 is 24%. It's basically increasing the budget 24% over what we put in the budget, which was what they asked for at budget time.
Right.
I note that we are at 8:55.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Definitely holding this off.
So we will
We
hold.
want a written, one written, and we want to see the budget, the general fund budget.
I mean, the other thing we say is we're considering it,
I would just say, we need it, if you want to do anything, it needs to be in writing, if you want to do anything. And not saying that we will consider it necessarily.
You want,
You want to see the plans. You want to see the plans,
Huh?
right? You want to see the plans, what's being planned and why. And I know that a lot of times these buses and these things have to be scheduled way in advance, like months in advance to come up with these
Yeah,
trips.
so-
So maybe that's why they're asking now, before they've
Yeah.
spent anything, if they're trying to plan things and they have to, schedule way in advance. But
well, that's kind of what Teresa said, was that, when they looked to schedule the buses, they find that they're a lot more expensive than they were in the past. And that they could only do 2 trips instead of 3, so they would need more money in order to do it. So, but all of that should be put into a proposal for why we might,
Writing in advance.
yeah,
anything,
I misunderstood. I thought you said they wanted to do an extra trip because they
That's
didn't
what I
have
thought
one.
too.
And now you said they wanted to, that they were only able to schedule 2 versus 3 that they really had planned to do.
I think that's where it came
Well,
down
that's
to.
2 different
Was that-
things.
They usually do 3 trips.
But again, that's why we need it in writing.
probably a little of both. It's
Probably
finding
a-
it more expensive and it doesn't fit in the budget, basically,
I was saying something, but I didn't get it.
right? Yeah, it's probably a little of both. Probably a little of both, if this is what they're thinking.
Yeah.
That they didn't do much in the last couple of years, and also everything's so much more expensive than it was before. So there's probably a little of both in there.
Oh, right.
Okay, so anyway, basically the word I'm gonna get back to them on is, if you want it, ask for it and
In writing.
explain why.
In writing.
Yeah,
All of which might have happened if she was here, but we.
yeah,
she's
but
not,
she,
so,
you
right.
know, she gave up because
Right.
we're still at it. And, you know.
Okay.
All right, let's see, the CSI rather, contracts sound good, if the board's willing to let me sign it. So I move that
Oh, right.
you approve the agreement with CSI for 2023.
Second.
That's not one thing.
Yeah, the community science institute.
Yeah, sorry.
Any discussion? That was always ready to go.
Yeah.
Janice?
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes. I move that we declare April Fair Housing Month. There's actually a resolution.
Yeah.
I'm not prepared for this purpose. I'm simply moving that resolution, which is what that does. Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Anybody want to know why?
No.
Okay. It's required, basically.
Okay. Do we have to do it?
Yeah, we
Okay.
have to do it. It's part of our,
All right, then that's good
Let's
enough.
do
You
it.
already explained it.
okay. Yes.
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes. I move we approve the CAC 2022 annual report.
Second. First, third.
This gets sent on to the DEC once we approve it.
Yep.
No comment, okay. Janice?
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yeah. Who was it who required to use the, well,
The
we
health
just have a,
department, wasn't it?
what?
Was it the health department?
Health department in conjunction with somebody else.
Soil and water,
Well, say again, Janice?
soil and water.
And water.
Oh,
Wanted to do a workshop on,
yeah.
you know, septic system. You know, so forth. I mean, I don't know that we need to do this, but instead of put it on, why not?
Yeah.
Given the ambiguity regarding what is the
I
policy.
think it's a good idea.
So, I move that we allow that use.
Second.
Discussion?
And they have a date, right?
Well, we don't. They can just, we can find a date that works. and
Okay.
fill it in.
They had a week that they wanted to do it in, so they said they could do any day that week.
Yeah, and then actually, there were 2 of our regular meetings already that week, so it only allowed them like I don't know, Monday and Friday or something.
Is it evening
Yeah.
or daytime?
They wanted an evening meeting.
Because it would be really good to make sure that publicity gets out about that.
Oh, yeah, we'll get plenty of time for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So you'll have to schedule around what, you know, regular meeting,
Yeah. Okay.
but we're good with it. Assuming the vote turns out positive, which you can do right now.
Connors,
Oh, yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes. All right, we've got, do you want to talk about anything to put on the agenda? Okay, we figured out, right? Yep.
Everything that we left out.
Everything we left out.
Minutes of January 3rd.
Yep.
The
Okay.
amendments to the correspondence policy. The
Yeah, I'll-
public hearing
Yeah, some
for
couple of
candidates. Goal setting,
Mhm.
short-term mental survey stuff, the IT cyber security.
Yep.
I don't know if we'll have the
There'll be
senior
more, you can count on it.
contract for seniors.
Yeah. Okay, meeting adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we didn't really.
So,